you're at a point where you have absolutely no idea, like, what your purpose is, what you're here on this earth for. You're absolutely lost. And, like, I feel completely, utterly, like, a failure, inadequate. Not to the point, like I said, of suicidal, but just, like, I don't even know, like, why I'm here.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 3 of the Andrew Deitsch podcast. I'm cranking out these episodes as fast as I can so that I can deliver more meaningful conversations and stories to you. So thanks for listening, and bear with me as I get these episodes out. I've got 12 in the tank right now, trying to crank them out. My guest today is my good buddy, Davis Jenkins. Davis is a real estate agent for Keller Williams, serving Woodstock and surrounding areas. Woodstock, Georgia, that is. And in this podcast, we actually didn't talk too much about real estate because I mainly wanted Davis to share his story. And this was actually the first time Davis had spoken out on a public platform like this. So I really appreciated his vulnerability and his honesty here. Before we started recording this podcast, Davis was a little apprehensive about where this podcast would be shared and who would listen to it, mainly because he did share a lot of things that most people would not know about him. And I explained that, yes, this podcast would be out in the world for anyone to listen to, but what better way for someone to hear your story than through a long-form 2-hour conversation where you can really explain yourself and, share your entire story? Wouldn't that be better than someone hearing it through the grapevine or sharing it with them in a 10-minute conversation? And I think that having a long-form podcast might be the best way for someone to hear your story because it's coming straight from you. It's not like someone interviewed you and had some journalistic edits and changed the story a little bit and condensed it down and edited it down into a blog post. This is an unedited long-form conversation where Davis can share exactly what he wants to share. And he hadn't really thought about it that way yet. And once I kind of opened that up to him and explained that side of it to him, he really opened up and he got deep with me, and I can't thank him enough for that. And yeah, thanks a lot, Davis. I know you're listening to this, man, but it really meant a lot that you were able to open up. Davis and I have known each other for a few years now, and everyone that knows him would say that he is one of the nicest and most caring people that they know. And during our podcast, he shares his life story, he shared his perspectives, and he shared his struggles. And like I said, I can't thank him enough for being on the podcast and sharing this with the world. And this podcast is very, very powerful for many reasons. But this was Davis's first podcast, and I hope that you get some value from it. And I hope that you can share it with somebody that might want to hear this, because Lord knows that there are plenty of people out there that need to hear this podcast. And I hope that this podcast gives you a different perspective. Davis has a very unique perspective on a lot of things. So give it up for my friend, Davis Jenkins. All right, dude, we're live.
We are live.
We're live, baby.
Rock on.
Cool. So, Davis, we are chilling in I don't want to say the address.
Yeah, just our house in Kennesaw.
The Wedge.
The Wedge.
So we're chilling in Davis's house, and it, funny enough, actually used to be my house too.
Yeah.
I used to live here with Davis and a couple other peeps.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get Davis on the podcast today because he's got a really cool story. But Davis, how would you describe yourself if you had to describe yourself in like a few words?
In a few words, I was about to say just one word, way too hard. Way too hard, because I'm like all over the map. But
I like that.
I would say a few words. Energetic, passionate person who's interested in a lot of things.
That's cool.
Passionate about helping people too.
That's
love
awesome.
God, love others is actually my life mission. So
Love God, love others.
Yeah.
I like that. That's cool. So, so Davis, one thing that's like been on my mind recently a lot is this idea of like, I think we tend to think of ourselves as like a stationary person, you know?
Right.
And I think you have a lot of perspective on the fact that people can change and people evolve, and you know, there's many seasons of life and there's reasons why people are the way they are. And you tend to, like, for example, if you look at like an old man, you might think like, oh, that's a grumpy old man. But that grumpy old man used to be one day, he used to be a baby that didn't know anything about life or anything at all. And so what would, you know, take us from infant baby Davis to how did infant baby Davis get to the Davis of today? I mean, obviously there's some crazy major milestones, but you know, take me back. Where were you born?
all over the place. Well, the life of John Davis Jenkins. Here I go. So
where were you born?
April 8th, 1991 in Nashville, Tennessee.
Nice. So how old are you as of today, if you don't want to do the math?
I am just turned 26. I feel
26.
old.
That's awesome, man. Just turned 26. Yeah. And if you haven't noticed, Davis has one of the best laughs ever. he loves laughing.
I do. Live.
Yeah, man. So you were born in, you said Memphis, Tennessee?
Nashville, Tennessee.
My bad.
I literally lived there for like a year. I was too young to remember anything. Then we moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. And then when I was 3, 4, moved to Memphis, Tennessee.
Nice.
Where I grew up.
You grew up in Memphis. Mm-hmm. And so you had one younger brother, right?
Yep. My brother who's 2 years younger than me.
Nice. Mm-hmm. I have a younger brother too, so we're kind of similar there. So you and your brother are pretty close, right?
Oh, extremely close. He's my best friend.
That's really awesome.
Really grateful for that.
A lot of people can't say that about their brothers. Mm-hmm. That's really cool. So growing up, you went to, did you go to public school, private school? What was
growing up, I went to private school, Woodland Presbyterian School in Memphis from kindergarten through 8th grade. It was like super, super small. It was good, at the time and everything, and really good education. I'm grateful for that, and played sports and was pretty cool with everybody I went to school with and everything. And then high school, went to bigger school, ECS, Evangelical Christian School, freshman, sophomore year. Then school, due to circumstances, honestly, man, I just went through a really hard time through school.
Yeah. In high school you're talking about?
Yeah, middle school, I would probably say the roughest, through school itself, the roughest years were middle school through 10th grade. A lot of anxiety going on, ADHD. I used to take prescription medication, so dealing with that, a lot of trial and error.
Walk me through that. So, when you were younger, how did you get diagnosed? What was the deal?
I actually got diagnosed with ADHD. I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, some people say ADHD is like a real thing. Some people don't. I mean, I personally think that ADHD is a thing. It's all how you deal with it, how you manage it.
Because there's definitely kind of an aspect where you could say, well, a doctor's interpreting.
Right.
I think that there's kind of a spectrum that you can be on. I think that there's a lot of different things in regards to it. It's not like, it's not like, a virus that you contract. It's like, it's a spectrum. Like, okay, there's people down on this end that are, complete opposite ADHD.
Right, you're able to focus, and then people are just like me, all over the place. Oh, squirrel. What?
Yeah, exactly. And so, when you've got someone like yourself that's very hyper and stuff, I'm sure as a kid you were not paying attention in school at all.
No, I was not.
So you went to a doctor and they prescribed you with some ADHD meds. Mm-hmm. How do you think that affected you?
Well, ability to focus would definitely help, and that's what I, tell everyone else. Some people are against medicine, some people are all for it, some people do it through a season of life, and that's what I did. Like I said, everybody's different. Everybody's story's different, and what works for somebody might not work for the others. I don't have a problem with it if you use it as prescribed, if you don't abuse it or anything. I probably, to be completely honest, I could probably still benefit from it. However, I just chose for me that I wanted to live a more natural, healthy lifestyle, and I wanted to do it naturally. So,
That's really cool.
Right when I moved to Georgia, I've stopped taking my medicine, so it's almost been about 4 years.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So I mean, obviously, when you're on the medicine, when you were a child, how did that affect you? Did you feel weird? Did you feel like this is something that I need? Or did you feel like this isn't really me, but this is what I'm being prescribed because I need to focus?
It was both, because I've taken a variety of medicines since I was, I think, 5 or 6 years old. I was really young. I started taking, met with a psychiatrist, psychologist, taking different prescription medications. So part of it was the struggles of dealing with the medications, because some of them just completely, like when I took them, I was not myself in a negative way. But some of them, when I took the right medicine for where I was psychologically and mentally and emotionally at the time, then it was good. And it was just like every day was a habit. Every day it was, or a routine rather.
Yeah. So every morning you took it before you went to school. Mm-hmm. Did you take it in the summers when you didn't have school?
I actually did.
Okay, cool.
Because I know, a lot of
some people don't
only did it during the school year and everything, or when they had take care of a lot of different things. I just took it.
Yeah, my personal philosophy on that kind of stuff is I think that if you can take it and you can actually benefit from it, then more power to you.
But if it's one of those things where, because it's just psychologically, mentally, it's such a wide, vast scope that some people like take a certain, whether it's medications in general or a certain medication, they just react so negatively to it. And I've been there where it just like completely, like the side effects are there, you're not yourself, whatever.
Yeah, so totally feel you on that. So like, for example, one thing that I always think about is like, if mainly people take it for school, right? That's the main thing that it seems like.
I would say that's one of the major reasons why people take it, either that or work, but I would probably say younger, school.
And it's interesting, like, it seems that if so many kids are being prescribed on these drugs, that possibly the problem isn't necessarily the kids. The problem could potentially be the way that school is designed. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Disagree?
I would agree. I think, and this is for a different discussion, not to get controversial.
No, we can go deep on it or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about anything. I think that's a big part of it. Is honestly, I think the whole school system needs a reform.
Yeah,
top
totally.
to bottom.
So totally.
I think that's just the way it's set up, because for some people, sitting in a classroom 7-8 hours a day works great for them. Obviously, through the breaks, changes of classes, lunch, possible PE and everything. But people like myself who literally can't sit still for long periods of time, and there's tons of other kids, a lot more, a higher percentage of people who struggle with that than people realize. I just think it needs to be more interactive, maybe more group oriented instead of just the lecture format. I feel like that's really old and outdated.
Definitely, I believe so too. And another thing that's hard, I think, is for parents when they go to a doctor, someone that they feel that they should be able to trust, and someone that is looked highly upon in society. And obviously, most people would say, oh wow, this person is smarter than me. If they're saying that my child needs to be prescribed this medication, then I'm going to go with it and say yes. And it really makes me wonder, if there's ulterior motives a lot of times with those types of things, or, what kind of kickback is this doctor getting if they prescribe this medication? Are they making money whether my kid takes this or not? Is that affecting their choices? And I think today, with the internet and everything, there's definitely a lot more personal research you can kind of do, and, not always have to take the doctor's word for it, 1,000%. But, that's I'm no expert in medicine or
neither
anything
am I,
like that.
But I definitely think unfortunately, that's probably a part of it.
Yeah, and I think that, getting opinions, second opinions, going to multiple types of doctors and hearing about all the types of options is definitely realistic. But to get back to it, would you say you had a positive experience being on those medications, or would you say it has impacted you negatively, or how do you think?
Both, all over the place.
Cool.
Like, I've been really, really, really low where, I don't know, I think period from 8th through 10th grade, just trying to find the right between my ADHD and anxiety, trying to find those medications and the right combinations, the right dosage and everything, where I was just extremely low, extremely insecure. I manifested myself in terrible ways. That's normally not like me. But when the medication, the combinations, and the dosages were correct and I was performing well, then of course
That's
went
good.
well.
So when you say you had anxiety, was that like, what? Talk me through that, because one weird thing with me is I'm just not a very anxious person, so
Right.
I don't experience that very often. So what kind of anxiety were you experiencing in middle school?
Social anxiety, because believe it or not, haven't always been the social butterfly that I am. Not at all. Like I used
So
to
you were
be
kinda
more,
shy?
yeah, more on the shy, and I think a lot of it was more, intertwined with anxiety and being insecure with myself and everything.
Yeah, and trying to get people to think
Right,
you're cool.
and I actually kind of manifested itself in OCD ways.
Huh.
In certain, like, it was really weird. Like, I think it was like a control issue. Like, I was struggling with being confident who I was at the time.
Definitely.
So I felt like I had to have control about certain, like, organizational things. So I hyper focused on those things. To try to trick myself mentally, thinking that, I kind of have some stuff together, even though in other areas of my life I don't.
That's very interesting. Mm-hmm. And that was in middle school, high school?
Yeah, it was middle school, early high school.
Gotcha. And so you said you went to different middle school and high school? Is that the deal?
Yeah, so kindergarten through 8th grade I went to one school. In 9th and 10th grade I went to another school. And
Gotcha.
then for junior and senior year I went to actually arguably probably the best year of schooling, 2 years of schools in my life.
Wow. So what was it like
school.
switching from the one school to the other school? Did you lose friends? Did you have many friends?
Honestly, I didn't really have that many friends. I had a couple of people I went through Boy Scouts with, and just had a lot of like acquaintances, but no like really true friends.
That's really cool. I forgot.
I think that was a big part of why I went through so many struggles.
Yeah.
And everything.
That's interesting. I always forget about Boy Scouts, which is weird. Because for those of you listening,
you're Eagle Scout.
we're both
That's right.
Eagle Scouts, which is the highest rank in Boy Scouts.
Less than 2% of Scouts get it. So for every 100, it's like 1 or 2.
Yeah, 1 or 2 out of 100. That's pretty impressive. And obviously, the Boy Scouts of America, I think, have undergone a lot of changes in the recent years. So, people are sometimes not as looking highly upon the Boy Scouts, but I look at my time in the Boy Scouts as very, very positive.
Me too. Absolutely incredible.
Pretty much exclusively positive. I don't think I had very many negative experiences.
Not at all.
In the Boy Scouts.
I mean, there's obviously like Philmont, which was this super intense backpacking trip in the wilderness, literally wilderness in the Rocky Mountains.
Talk about that for a second. Like, so what is Philmont for anyone who doesn't know?
Philmont, in Boy Scouts, there's 3 high venture camps. Northern Tier, which is canoeing in the boundary waters of Minnesota in Canada. Philmont, backpacking for 10 days, 2 weeks, something like that, in New Mexico, literally hundreds of thousands of acres of wilderness solely for outdoor related things in the Boy Scouts and Sea Base. Sailboat from Key Largo to Key West. Philmont was, like I said, literally everything you brought with you carried on your back. They had like trading posts along the way. Every couple days you restock on food and dispose of your trash and everything like that, but all the water literally you brought with you from the trip, and then you got like from streams.
Yeah, so the interesting thing that I always thought of, I never went on Philmont actually, but a lot of my friends did. I don't think you look at Philmont necessarily as fun in the moment.
It's more of the experience. It's more of an accomplishment, because it's still to this day, honestly, one of the most physically and mentally rigorous things I've ever done.
Yeah.
I mean, literally carrying 45 pounds on your back. Actually, I think my pack was like 48 to be exact. Going from
and
7
you probably
miles
weighed less than
to like 15 miles a day, and you're like in between. Base camp was, I think, at like 6,800 feet, and we climbed Mount Phillips, which is like 12,000 feet. So you have to factor in elevation, because the air's a lot thinner and everything, and plus all that weight on your back, so it's just brutal.
So how did you get water? At the trading posts?
Trading posts and through the streams. We had like filters and then iodine tablets to help filter the water.
Wow. Iodine tablets taste nasty.
They do, so that's why the filters are a lot better.
Yeah.
Because it literally filters all that junk out, bacteria, things of that nature.
The cool thing I think about Philmont is, like, you can't really quit in the middle of it.
No, you can't. There was one time I remember, I forgot, like, we made a collective decision as a group. Like, we had our park ranger, Ranger Dave. I remember that. He was pretty cool. He went with us, and they have, like, the way Philmont set up is they have, like, guides that help guide people the first couple of days, and then once they feel comfortable, reading the topographical map and the compass, they kind of go on their way.
Wow.
He had a vote, because there was, like, one day, I forget what day it was, I want to say, like, the third or fourth day, the last day he was with us. You can either take the road or the trail. The trail was like 3 times distance-wise longer, but it was way easier of a hike, way more flat. So the elevation change was way more gradual, or we could do the road, which was like only like 4 or 5 miles, but it was literally like straight up. And I mean straight up, the elevation change, I think, in one day was like ridiculous, like 2,000, 2,500 feet in one day.
Wow.
And if you're hiking, that's absolutely insane.
Yeah, like, so which did you guys do?
We did the road. I got outvoted. It was like all the dads, and I was like the only guy who wanted to vote for the trail, but all the other guys were like, and I still got my brother, we joke about this all the time, oh, let's do the road. I'm like, oh my gosh.
So your brother was with you?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was my dad, my brother, and I, and some of my dads, and, really good family friends and their dads, and then a bunch of other guys.
That's cool. Yeah. I didn't know your brother went with you. So how old were you guys?
I was 16, 17, and my brother was 15, I think.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's a bonding experience right there.
For sure.
And your dad went with you too?
Yeah.
That's cool. My dad would never freaking do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was insane. Yeah, I was definitely blessed to have my dad actually went on a lot of the summer camps and campouts with me, so it was really cool
That's awesome.
That he invested the time to do that with me, and a lot of them, of course, I did with my brother too.
That's really cool.
Yeah, but back to the frustrating thing real quickly. Sorry.
Go back.
It actually hailed on us when we were on the road. And I remember I got so frustrated because Ranger Dave was saying, oh, only a mile and a half to go. And then we were all just absolutely destroyed, just so tired. I'm like, oh, we had to take a break like every 5 or 10 minutes because you can imagine all that weight on your back, literally sweat pouring down your face. I mean, it wasn't that hot, but like, granted, with all the stuff, when you're hiking with the, like I said, everything on your back and everything, I was like, there's no way we haven't been a mile and a half, and I actually like threw my backpack off and like, I'm done. But then I realized like, I can't go anywhere, so I might as well like suck it up and keep going.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And dude, like, I know you. I feel like I could see you like getting so. I was
getting so flustered and so frustrated, but just press on.
That's cool because like all you can do is keep going, dude. You can't like just leave your path. Like, where are you gonna go?
Right.
Like that's such a crazy mental experience because in most things in life you can just decide to quit.
Right. And what's I was literally about to say that, like, you're tied up against the wall, like, hardships and everything, and you have to just keep going.
That's so cool. I really, like, I wish I would have done Philmont because I think
Philmont was definitely experienced. It was the direct opposite of Sea Base, which was the summer before, and it was just on the sailboat, just super laid back. From Key Largo to Key West, just literally chilling on a sailboat for like 6 days.
So you went to Sea Base and Philmont? Did you do the other one too?
No, so I did those two, and because I got my Eagle Scout, and then like the summer, like a couple months after I got my Eagle, a Northern Tier, but I was just kind of ready to take a break from Scouts.
Yeah, once you're in Scouts for that long.
So my brother did Northern Tier with my dad. My dad actually got all 3. So my dad got the crown. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, so like for people who are listening, so when you're an Eagle Scout, that basically means like from when you start, you have to achieve all these
ranks from Tenderfoot to Eagle. You have to get a certain amount of merit badges, and to get to each certain class, you have to go to a certain amount of activities, certain amount of campouts. You have to have a certain amount of requirements to get the merit badges within themselves.
Yeah, and you have to like serve in leadership positions.
Right.
And
patrol leader, senior patrol leader, chaplain. I served as chaplain quite a few times.
Nice.
And of course, the Eagle Scout Project.
I was always the scribe.
Oh my gosh.
I had to send out the newsletter.
See you as the scribe.
I had to send out the newsletter and stuff. I was the scribe. Such a cop-out position too, because you didn't actually have to be in charge of that much. I was such a scrub back in the day. Like, I was the
I
scribe.
kind of was too in a lot of ways, but it's all good.
That's just what happens when you're young.
Definitely got me out of my comfort zone because a lot
awesome.
of times, being a part of, the scouts and everything taught me, the leadership skills. Because a lot of the guys, honestly, when I was in that position, they were like a lot older than me.
Yeah,
so I was like in middle school, early high school, and I was like trying to keep a bunch of juniors and seniors in high school who still haven't gotten their Eagle Scout yet, like in line. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But it was good for me.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's another interesting thing is like being in charge of people that are older than you.
Right.
And it's another interesting thing when you're in scouts and like from the beginning when you're really young, you look at the older scouts and you think they're so cool and like they're so much older. And then all of a sudden one day you are the older scouts and you're like looking at the younger scouts.
This guy's in the varsity football team, homecoming king, but he's also Boy Scout. I'm like, yeah, I'm not that cool, but...
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. Boy Scouts were definitely looked upon from the outside as like pretty lame, I feel like, in my
kind of nerdy. That's
I definitely
for
didn't
sure.
tell people I was a scout
I
at school.
did. I mean,
sometimes I did.
I feel like once you bridge high school, like middle school, it's kind of cool, but once you get like freshman, sophomore year, it's like...
Yeah, dude. You know what I did for my swag? So like my cousin was a Eagle Scout, or he was a Boy Scout. I think he got his Eagle. Yeah, he did. And you know those Boy Scout socks that go to your knees, the knee-high Boy Scout socks? Oh, yeah. So my cousin sent me like all of his old Scout clothes because you have to wear a uniform and stuff. So like lots of hand-me-downs and stuff like that, so you don't have to pay for the brand new clothes and all that. So anyways, my cousin sent me all this stuff. And one of the things he sent me was his knee-high Boy Scout socks.
Amazing.
And I wore the crap out of those once I got older because it was so funny, dude. Like, because the uniform is so lame.
It is.
The uniform is so lame.
I will have to
they've
say,
changed the uniform.
I still have that at my parents' house is collecting pounds of dust.
Yeah, definitely me too. It's definitely like a relic, like an artifact.
Relic.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like one of those things you're like, oh man, this has been around, you know? One of those things when you like married and have kids, you're gonna go back to your parents' house and find it or something weird. So yeah, Boy Scouts, that was definitely like a cool time. Taught you a lot and stuff. So then once you went to that second high school, you were still in Scouts and...
No, actually, so May 6th, 2008, I'm good with dates. That's when I got my Eagle. You are good with dates. And summer, and then, the fall of 2008 is when I entered my junior year of high school. Wow, I feel old.
That's cool.
Blue Ridge School, which is in Virginia, just outside of Charlottesville, Virginia, the base of the Blue Ridge Mountains. All guys, college preparatory school. It was amazing. Like, best schooling experience of my life. Like, I still stay in touch with some of those guys. Looking back, I feel like, and I still now, I guess I could never like to change something, but I wish I can, stay better in touch with those guys. But, like I said, a really, really solid group of guys. My graduating class was awesome. And even the grade above me when I, entered in junior year.
So is it a 2-year program?
No, it's actually 4 years. But a lot of the guys there didn't go. We called them 4-year boys. People went through Blue Ridge, freshman through senior year. I would say a lot of people actually enter in either sophomore or junior year.
Nice. Was that your decision to go there, or was it your parents or both?
It was. It was suggested to by some friends of ours, like, because, I was going through a really hard time, through the anxiety and just everything, and I just was kind of done with regular school, honestly. I wanted something different, just my learning style and how I'm wired and everything. And someone mentioned to my... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go for it.
Someone mentioned to my parents, how about boarding school? I'm like, and it's really cool too because I feel like boarding school has such a negative stigma to it by a lot of people. People either think, high school dropouts or people who struggle with certain areas of their lives, and parents just kind of sit their kids there to just kind of, I don't want to deal with you for this period of time. I know it sounds bad, but it's honestly
sometimes it can be true.
Sometimes it's true. Or military boarding school, which is nothing wrong with that. I actually know quite a few people who've had really positive experiences through those two. It's more of the college preparatory side, but it was really neat, man. That's really cool.
I actually kind of forgot about that because I remember you mentioned that before about how you went. So it was an all boys school,
all guys.
So when you guys saw some girls, you probably freaked out. Oh my gosh,
freaked out. We had these mixers a couple times every semester, and it was everyone
were you meet up with an all
girls
school or something,
dances. It was amazing. And everybody, it was cool though, because I remember we had people like from all over the country, like people from California, people from Georgia, people from New York, and people from like China, South Korea, Russia, other European countries, even some South America. It was really cool. But people would like give me crap because it wasn't Virginia, but it's like not the deep South, so I'd like obviously kind of a Southern accent, so people kind of it was cool. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
So so you said it was like pretty different there because it was a totally different experience than your regular high school,
right?
And you said it was kind of a different learning style. How was that different? Like, I'm just curious, It
was definitely more interactive. What was super sick at the time when you're actually going through school was every Tuesday and Friday we had half day. So that was sick. But if you really think about it, you might think, oh my gosh, that's not fair. You're not getting that education. However, we were actually living there. We didn't have cars there. So we were there like at the school, minus going away for weekends or holidays to see family or whatever. Literally there 24/7.
Yeah.
But I mean,
That's
I would
cool.
just say just like the teachers there were honestly, with the exception of like a couple, and that's like part of for the course for any school. Teachers were super awesome, and just the activities and everything involved. Sorry, I'm trying to. So I had to cough real quick.
No, you're good.
Through the school was just like really super involved and everything. And like I said, I'm a big outdoors guy, so it was like on the base of the Blue Ridge Mountain. So literally, we could like walk and like hang out and go on hikes and stuff
That's
like
cool.
that. So
that's really awesome. So once you graduated from there, what happened?
Okay, so I graduated. I was looking at a few colleges, Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama, and then Mississippi State in Mississippi. And then, of course, I had a safety. Everyone has safety schools, which was University of Memphis in Memphis.
So talk to me about college because, when I was going from high school to college, I didn't even give it a second thought that I wouldn't go to college.
Me either.
Was there a thought in your mind of not going to college?
Honestly, not in a million years.
Yeah.
It's just,
and what was the draw that it seemed, because you were already at boarding school, you were already kind of away from your parents.
So I kind of already had a leg up as regards to that and the whole roommates because, a lot of people through high school are still living with their parents. And
exactly.
Have the room and
so they're not
everything.
used to being away for that long. So you were already kind of used to that aspect. What was the draw to go to college? I mean, obviously your parents probably wanted you to go.
Yeah, no, definitely. And honestly, like you said, that's just what all my friends and family and everyone
This is what you do.
With 4 years high school, go to college, get a degree.
Yeah. So when you went, did you have any idea of what you wanted to study, or did you just kind of like
Honestly,
wing it?
I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was just going to do business because I know it's so cliche, so common for guys, and that's what kind of my dad did and his brothers, my uncles did. But really just business related. I guess I just thought, hey, I'll kind of take it for what it is, but I'll just start this, and worst comes to worst, I'll just change it if I need to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, Samford University, which is in Birmingham, Alabama, Mississippi State, Starkville, Mississippi, and University of Memphis, obviously Memphis.
Yeah.
It was a toss-up between Mississippi State and Samford, but I chose to go to Samford.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
So you ended up going to Samford.
Yeah.
Okay,
Not
cool.
Stanford with a T. So many people, Stanford, you so smart. And sometimes I kind of play it off like, yep, I went to Stanford.
That is correct.
Even when I went there, Stanford, yep, I go to Stanford.
Yep, correct.
No big deal.
No biggie.
I'm just a genius out in Cali, living it up on the West Coast, chilling.
That's awesome. So you went to Sanford.
With an M, Samford, right? You got it.
Samford. Cool.
Yeah.
So walk me through that. I know you have some kind of crazy stories and all that, and so going there, meeting your roommates. What was?
It was awesome, man. I had awesome suite mates. The way our school was wired was, all guys. So it was kind of like it was cool though because I was kind of like reliving Blue Ridge on a bigger, larger scale.
So
like
just the dorms you're saying was all guys?
Yeah.
Okay, not the whole school.
And then no. And then all girls dorm, freshmen. I had an awesome roommate. He actually, and I had awesome suite mates too. So that was definitely makes, everything a 10 times better when you have good solid roommates and suite mates and everything. So
nice. Yeah, of course. So, is that where you joined the fraternity, or did you?
Actually, yeah. So I tried to at the first semester I got a bid from a fraternity, and then I really wanted to join another one, which was actually the same one my dad was involved in, but I didn't get a bid from them. But I did, second semester.
So, like, for people who are listening who have no idea about sororities or fraternities or Greek life or anything, number one, what was the draw for you of, like, wanting to get into that? And then also, like, kind of explain that whole, like, bid process for people who have no idea.
Right. I mean, it's definitely one of those things. I mean, I definitely feel like people can be pressured into doing it. Like I said, there's stigmas with everything. But Greek life, there's pros and cons. It really just depends on, honestly, how you use it, how you go about going through it.
But from your perspective, why did you want to, like, join a fraternity?
I honestly, for several reasons. I mean, my dad was in a fraternity, so it was just kind of like keeping up the legacy. I feel like that's a big thing, definitely.
Especially in the South.
Oh, for sure, 100%. And two, I'm not gonna lie, just to kind of fit into, because the people right off the bat I was hanging out with, and even like people I hung out with high school, who I really connected well with, I was really tight with, kind of planted the seed, like, oh, I'm gonna join a fraternity in college. You should join a fraternity and like have that status,
Yeah, it's like cool when you were like, oh, I'm a whatever, I'm a Pike, right. I'm a Sigma whatever.
Sigma Chi, Sigma Nu, ATO, whatever.
Yeah. So the one that you wanted to get in was the one your dad was in, and you didn't get a bid?
Yeah, I didn't get a bid. I was really frustrated. If I went through this, things went differently and I went to the same school sophomore year, I probably could have gotten a bid from them, just because throughout the school year I developed a lot of good relationships with those guys.
That's interesting. So like, for those of you listening, so basically when you're going through this whole bidding process, basically what happens, at least in my experience, is there's like a specific day where you kind of go around and visit all these fraternities. You're kind of shopping.
Meet the guys, and they get to know you.
It's
you
like,
get to know them, and you get to kind of decide which ones you want to pursue. So it has to be mutual. You have to choose them, and they have to choose you.
Yeah, so it's kind of like dating. It's like speed dating. You go around and you try to talk to some, schmooze it up with the older brothers and all that kind of stuff. So basically, for anyone who's listening doesn't know what a fraternity is, basically it's a organization of all males. Well, there's female fraternities too, but that's a technicality. Right. Pretty much everyone calls them sororities. But fraternity, like, literally means brotherhood. So, like, it's basically like a brotherhood, and they typically would have like a house on campus. Did they have fraternity houses?
They did.
Cool. So, like, there was like a house on campus, so it was like cool. You could throw parties in the house. Right. Everyone, like, girls wanted to like hang out with you if you were in a frat, kind of.
Dress frat-tastic.
Yeah, the like whole fratty kind of
with
dressing.
With the pastel seersuckers, which I still kind of dress fratty. Not as bad as I used to, but it's all
Davis
good.
Definitely was a frat daddy. I know for sure. So, bow ties.
Oh yeah, blazers with the red. I still rock the red pants and my green pants and the Sperry's and everything. And
yeah, I feel you. So basically, fraternities sometimes get a bad rap because they can be kind of douchey,
right?
And
and the way they carry themselves, the way they kind of look upon people who are independent, GDI, swag,
Jeeds. Jeeds. Yeah, that's funny.
People who are not in a fraternity. Yeah, I feel like they're definitely kind of looked upon, and obviously a lot of the activities that are very prevalent in Greek life, people from the outside frown upon that.
Yeah.
Or frown upon, oh, Greek life is only associated with this, don't do that. That's not necessarily the case, however, even though that is prevalent. But it's prevalent everywhere.
Yeah. So you joined a fraternity. It wasn't necessarily the one you wanted to get in, but it was a good one.
Yeah.
You thought it was good. So, like, kind of just what happened?
With the fraternity?
With anything. Whatever. What ended up, like, so you joined a fraternity. How did that affect, like, your college experience? How did it, was it good? Was it bad?
Gotcha. I mean, it was good and bad. I mean, I'll kind of, intertwine this with my freshman college experience, because it has a, kind of beginning part of what kind of, had a big impact on my life when I went through a lot of struggles and everything. I got introduced, I didn't really, as far as drugs and alcohol go, I didn't really do anything through high school. I mean, I had a couple of beers here and there in high school and everything, and of course the summer between senior year of high school and freshman year of college, I tampered with some things.
Yeah.
But
at the boarding school, was there ever like alcohol there? Or was it pretty?
No, I mean
at
the school, no. I mean it was on lockdown.
Boarding school.
I mean, there
That's
were some
interesting.
people that
Were you like curious about that kind of stuff? Obviously.
I was. I mean, like I said, I was pretty straight cut and obviously once I hit the college, I was like a rule follower for the most part.
Yeah, me too.
But
I feel like we can relate in that way because like my parents, are very, very, Christian family. They don't drink really often. Like my dad will maybe have a beer once in a while. Never smoked, never did drugs. So that whole world to them is very different. And so like for me, for example, like in high school when I started like drinking, experimenting, smoking weed, all that kind of stuff, like it was definitely very frowned upon from my parents in a way that they could not even fathom or understand because
I was the same.
Because they hadn't ever been in that world or understood the draw of it. Because I think once you become more mature, you kind of realize, different things. But an interesting thing that people don't think about is, alcohol has such a not even that negative of a stigma in today's society.
That's true.
Which is interesting. But like other hard drugs like cocaine or, heroin or, really any other drugs pretty much always have like this negative connotation. And,
Absolutely.
So kind of just to get the elephant out of the room, you kind of went through some struggles with drugs and alcohol.
Absolutely. And it kind of really blew up freshman year of college, being involved in that scene. Hanging around the wrong crowd, I was just making terrible decisions and everything. I just was honestly, I'll say I was not a good person. I lied, deceived, manipulated a lot of people, did a lot of things I'm not proud of, which we can all, say in some short, but I definitely, I never had that much freedom in my life. So when I got to college, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I literally, away from my parents, not at boarding school and everything. And I was like, oh, I can literally do anything I want.
That's like the whole, like,
kid in a candy store.
Not to get super crude with it, but it's kind of like the whole stigma with like Catholic school girls, like they're the sluttiest girls in the school because like they're Catholic. So like their parents are so like telling them to be abstinent and they're like, all the time being told not to have sex, not to do any bad stuff, and then like as soon as they get alone with you, they're like the freakiest girl,
right?
Like, so it's kind of like opening Pandora's box. If you've been in this boarding school where it's total lockdown, no one's even exposed to alcohol or drugs and all this stuff, kind of like you would at public school. At least in my experience,
right?
When you got to college, it was just like a free for all. You kind of, were open to all kinds of stuff.
So my freshman year of college, like I was so consumed with just partying, having a good time, drugs and alcohol and everything that honestly, I did not have a successful freshman year of college at all.
As far
I
as
actually
grades.
bombed out. Like a really bad GPA. So
dude, there's no, like that's just part of what happens, man.
One of those things where, and like I said, not to beat a dead horse. I mean, it's not like it's not because I didn't do the work or I couldn't do the work. It's because I didn't do the work. Because,
exactly.
Like I said, I was so consumed.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone, a lot of times when people like fail out of school or whatever, I feel like it's typically because it's not because they're dumb. It's just because like they don't apply themselves.
What we were saying about the whole school system reforms, I feel like the GPA and the whole system is really a bad way to gauge because you can't gauge because you're automatically labeled as dumb if you have an X GPA. It's not necessarily you're dumb or you're smart. It's just everyone learns differently and everyone has different styles and ways they are successful and go about doing different things.
And the thing that frustrates me is like, like a GPA, it's kind of based on how you perform on tests, and tests are based on how much you can regurgitate memorized knowledge. Mm-hmm. And there's no gauge or test of how much you comprehend or how could you teach this to someone? Maybe you know the facts mentally in your brain of the memorization, but like, do you actually comprehend and understand these concepts, or are you just regurgitating exactly what the teacher said? You know? And that's what really frustrated me as well about the school system. I think a lot of people resonate with that. So, you know, not to glorify drug use or alcohol use, but like, you know, how were you kind of exposed to that? Because you said kind of in high school, you know, you'd only had a couple beers.
Yeah.
Was it the fraternity, or was it, you know, friends?
It was that and just people. I mean, I hung out with a lot of people my freshman year of college, so it was within that scene and outside.
Hitting the bars.
Yeah,
and
the bars and just
and
people's houses and just amongst, you know, other substances and everything. And it just got like way exorbitantly out of hand.
Yeah, that's crazy. So like, you know, people, you know, just so people can kind of get a picture, you know, like I said, not to glorify this situation, but you know, what kind of, you know, I would say, what experiences stick out in your mind of like times when things were just completely out of control, like situations, or, you know, just so people can kind of have a picture of like what was going on, if anything, you know, if there's any like one situation that really stuck out where you're like, whatever.
Right. I mean, there's tons of times, obviously, you know,
and if you don't want to share anything, then like I understand that too.
Right.
Because it's personal questions and stuff.
Right, absolutely. I'll just be super vague about it. Like I said, I mean, not to, you know, knock on you or anything. I just one of those types of people who don't like to glorify that just because of my story and everything, which we'll talk about here, I guess, in a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, I didn't even show up. I mean, I'll just be like super vague about it. I didn't even show up to my finals second semester of my freshman year of college just because I was so consumed with everything. So I know it's super vague, but just...
no, I understand.
Yeah,
man. And so if there's anyone out there that is, you know, maybe listening to this and they're in college and they are very consumed with drugs and, you know, alcohol and whatever that might be, what kind of advice, you know, what kind of, you know, talk to that person right now. What would you, you know, say to them?
Anyone who's struggling with alcohol and drugs. My thing is, I'm a very, like, not judgmental person at all. I actually used to be very judgmental up until, I would say, boarding school opened my mind, college, and especially what I've gone through my story has really opened my eyes. I honestly have no problem with people drinking, and if you try stuff here and there, obviously I'm not going to promote that to anybody, but don't, like, it's not life and death. Everybody, goes through phases. I mean, I certainly did. As long as you're able to, again, not promoting anything, as long as you're able to be happy, joyous, and free and enjoy life, and being able to invest in people, love God, love others, pursue what you're passionate about, invest in relationships, your family, your friends, and being able to do all that and there's no issue, then honestly, it's not really a thing. However, when you cross that bridge to when it starts negatively affecting your health, your relationships with your family, your relationships with your friend, your jobs, everything like that, that's when it comes to a point where it becomes an issue.
Definitely.
So from that, if those people out there, I would say just be open and honest about it, because I literally, going back, and a lot of people I think can relate to this who are going through drugs and alcohol. Really, the reason why I did, a lot of people revert to that is because they're feeling a void. I was doing those sorts of things because I was feeling, for me, a spiritual void that was not there, that was lacking. So really just be open and honest with other people with what you're going through at all times. If you're really struggling, you're getting bullied, you're really insecure about your stuff, you're stuffing feelings over time, you had a really hard thing that happened to you, like, for example, death of a family member, something that happened to you that you don't want to necessarily share to the world, I would encourage you just to find, you know, if you're not close with certain friends or certain family members, like, seek help immediately, and like be open. There will always be people out there who are safe people, who are good listeners, who could relate to you. Hey, I might not know exactly what you're going through. I can't, but I know, either I know someone who has, or I heard of things, or I could at least be a good friend and listen.
That's really
type
cool.
of a thing, because it literally, like, it might sound small, but like literally being open with someone and literally just talking with someone what you're going through is like so extremely powerful.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one reason why I kind of wanted to like start this podcast too, is it's a great way to have like really cool, meaningful conversations with people. You know, it would be not weird of me to call you up and say, hey, Davis, let's talk about your life story. But because, that's just like a little bit, it's just like a not normal thing to do. But it's kind of cool when you have a podcast like, yo, dude, you have a really cool story. Like, I want you to be able to like share
Absolutely.
that with people. So you failed out of Sanford, completely bombed out. And what did your parents say?
Honestly, I played my parents for fools. They had no idea what I was doing when I was going through school. I mean, I'm sure at the same time, parents aren't dumb. They probably had an idea. They probably had an idea. But just as far as what at the level it was, completely, and that was completely me to this day. I'm very sorry for and everything. But I, played them for fools and actually like found out about it. So
they found out.
They found out, and they were, as rightfully so, and any parent and any loved one or anyone in general would rightfully so. They were obviously livid and everything. Yeah. They're like, okay, but with the amazing people, amazing parents they didn't like completely fly off the handle and like cut me off or like leave me on the wayside or anything like that. They just said, okay, well, this sucks and we hate how this happened, but it's okay. It's part of life. Things happen. Let's move on and
That's
continue.
Cool.
Obviously, that love and support and everything, which is amazing. So from there, I took, trying to remember, it was one semester or a year off. I think it was a semester off where I just decided to work. That's when I, started doing odd jobs like landscaping, farm work for my parents, neighbors, and Chick-fil-A.
Nice.
Never thought away. My pleasure. Great day, Chick-fil-A. Speaking this, Davis, how may I serve you? There it goes.
Never goes away.
Started working at Chick-fil-A. And then,
were you still, not to be super blunt, but were you still like doing drugs, alcohol, or were you pretty clean at that point?
I was. I went through a little period of time. I think it's just because once my parents found out and I was freaked out, like,
yeah, you were like, I gotta get straight.
Really brief period of time. I'm talking like a couple weeks, maybe a month, maybe two, where I literally didn't really do anything.
But then you kind of just got right back into it. And were you living at home?
Yeah, I was living at home.
So your parents did not know still?
Yeah, no, they didn't know. Oh, well, no. Yeah, once I came home, well, they knew, like, literally, I would say within a couple weeks after I came home, they found out. Because they obviously knew my grades. And then I still played them for fools. And then they found out everything, the reason why and stuff. So
yeah, that makes sense.
But working at Chick-fil-A, and then I think it was like like I said, I can't remember if it was like a semester, a year after I started going to Southwest Tennessee Community College to kind of get my GPA up, to take some classes part-time while I was working. And then drugs.
And was that your parents like kind of saying you need to go back to school, or was that you? Or
it was mutual. It was like, all right, well, I want to continue with school to build up my GPA and everything. Because like I said, I was still at the point where I felt like, oh, I need to go to school just because,
that's just what you need to do.
I need to do. And then picking up on the drugs and alcohol again, experimenting with more, other things, and alcohol was getting worse. And I would say, especially as my story, that point from when I came home, the use and what I was partaking in was more becoming a necessity than it being a luxury. Huh. When I was at college, it was, don't get me wrong, it was still way out of hand, still kind of definitely unmanageable and everything, but I view that whole year as a lot of good times, obviously, and it was, like I said, luxury, but when I came home, it started to become a necessity. So
that's very interesting.
So, it was just starting getting out of hand. Just the drinking and everything else that I was doing.
That's that's crazy. So did you ever think, like you said, it was becoming more of a necessity, were you consciously feeling that, or were you just kind of going through the motions?
I think deep down, deep down, I definitely knew I had a problem. But I didn't, didn't tell anyone, didn't admit it to anybody. You know, definitely, even it was crazy because people saw it before I do. You know, you hear the saying, people see things in other people for themselves. That's true in so many ways. Because definitely even people who I still stay in touch with today, some of those people, looking back, they were looking out for me. They were like, yo, like, because I hung out with people who are doing the same exact things, but it's just the way I handle myself, and it was a whole new level. We're like, dude, you need to kind of slow down, take it easy. Like, we're worried about you. Like, how are you doing at school? Like, genuinely caring about me. And I didn't really think about it. Honestly, I didn't really care just because I was so consumed in self-centeredness, myself, what I was doing. That's
really interesting. That's cool that you had people around you that cared.
Right.
And it sucks that, you push them away, that...
Yeah, it just sucks. It's what I was going through and just, the way it was at the time.
Yeah.
So,
like I said, not to glorify any stuff like this, but just so people kind of know, the severity of it. And so people, some people might think like, oh, he was doing drugs, he was smoking weed or something. Like, you were doing some hard drugs. Like,
I experimented with some things.
Yeah, so. And I mean, like I said, I don't want to glorify anything, but just so people know, like, you were doing some drugs that, people could die doing.
And alcohol within itself. I mean, like
alcohol
we were
within itself is a very dangerous drug.
Overlooked, so...
Yeah, and this is something that is very interesting because I had a conversation with my friend Ashlyn yesterday. We recorded a podcast. It'll be up when this podcast goes up. And we had an interesting conversation. We explored this area about drugs as well. And we were kind of talking about, psychedelic drugs a little bit and some things like that. And I listened to a podcast recently where this guy was talking about how drugs are just chemicals, right? Like,
pretty much.
Our brain produces drugs. Our body is basically made up of, drugs, because all drugs is a chemical compound. Right. And chemical compounds are elements that are put together, and everything in the universe is made up of elements, right? So everything is made up of chemicals.
Right.
So you could kind of say that our entire bodies are made up of drugs, because they're all... in a weird
way of looking, absolutely, yeah.
In a weird way of looking at it, and so because drugs are simply chemical compounds, they can't have a moral right or wrong. Like a lot of people say, well, this is a bad drug. Oh, this drug's okay. And like drugs that you would take as medicine, you'd say, oh, your ADHD drugs, those are good drugs. But, cocaine, heroin, those are really bad drugs.
Right.
And now that you were taking those ADHD drugs and then you were abusing other kinds of hard street drugs and stuff like that, I would kind of say that drugs are not good or bad. But they can be abused.
Absolutely,
100,000%.
Yeah, I mean, them themselves are not, but it's if you obviously use into excess and what you do as a repercussion of that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so like for example, if you were saying taking this is a hard question, this is a hard subject to wrap your brain around, just to think about, but for example, taking ADHD medicine, you said you definitely had benefits from that, but there's definitely like some negatives to that as well. So it's kind of like there's a weird balance with drugs and consuming different things, and it is very weird how alcohol is so positively a proponent in our society, and no one really thinks if you drink it's that big of a problem, even though it is a huge killer.
Absolutely.
Tons of people die every single year of alcohol overdose, of DUIs. Kids go to college and they've seen their parents drink, so they don't think it's a problem and they just drink themselves to death.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I wasn't really necessarily going anywhere with that, but I just thought it was an interesting kind of concept that I literally brought up yesterday in the podcast, as we were kind of talking about, there's not necessarily such thing as like a bad or a good drug, but it's mainly about the person and how they use them, how they abuse them, stuff like that. Like you were saying earlier, if drinking alcohol does not affect your relationships, doesn't affect your job, doesn't affect how it doesn't affect you in a negative way, more power to you. Have a beer after you get home from work.
Absolutely.
But abusing them, I think everyone listening to this podcast, this is kind of an obvious thing to say, but it's all about moderation and using drugs and
for sure.
Whatever. If it doesn't affect you in a negative way, then more power to you, but I would really closely examine actually what it's doing to your life, and because it probably is affecting you negatively in some way.
Right.
And I think a lot of people will say, I don't have a problem, but and that's kind of where you were. Your coworkers were saying you didn't have a problem, but you were kind of so blind to it.
Yeah.
So you kind of took some semesters off, and then you went to a community college.
Southwest Tennessee Community College to kind of get my GPA because I was going to go to University of Memphis. I was working.
Not to be stereotypical, but I would kind of say a lot of times people think that people that go to community college, they're trying to get their life together and stuff too. So I'm sure that there was some bad environments there as well. Just
Definitely.
like, you were in a more of a preppy kind of fraternity environment before. There was drugs there. There's alcohol there.
Yep.
You go to a community college.
Got connected and started hanging out with the wrong crowd for sure.
Yeah, and you can find the wrong crowd very easily, I feel like.
Absolutely.
So you were definitely, at that community college.
Definitely
you were living at home? Were you living at home?
Yeah, I was still living at home. I actually did well there. Not to compare or rag on schools or anything. I actually did well there because it wasn't that rigorous academically, and plus, I guess the scare of my previous GPA and how it was, inclined me to take school more seriously. So I did. So I did well in the classes that I took and everything, and work was going well. I was farm work and the odd jobs that we're doing at Chick-fil-A. I was enjoying that. But the alcohol and the drugs were just escalating very quickly. So going to very bad places, associating myself with very bad people and everything.
Yeah. So. And I mean, not to be morbid, but in those types of situations, you could die,
Absolutely. Honestly, and I'm not just saying this here, and for those listening, I'm not glorifying this. I'm not comparing my story to other people or what I've been through other people. I feel like so many people, really quickly, I'm sidetracking, ADHD, and then I'll get back on track. I feel like so many people, whether it's directly or indirectly, compare, and I'm guilty of this too. I feel like we all are.
Yeah.
Compare our lives to other people, oh, you haven't been through as much, or your life hasn't been as hard, or I've overcome more than you, so what do you know about it? I wouldn't necessarily say that's the case. I'd say it's not whether your life is harder, you've been through more stuff. Everyone's life is just different.
100%.
I believe that. God puts things in your life, different circumstances, different people, different events in people's lives at different times, period.
Yep. I believe that 100,000,000%. And that's another reason why I wanted to have this podcast, is because everyone's got a story. No matter if you're a random dude that's living a totally normal life, or if you have some kind of crazy backstory, or if you are a billionaire, or if you're a homeless dude. Everyone's got a story. Everyone's got something you can learn from. And so, and that's a big part. So
back what I was saying.
Yeah.
ADHD.
No, it's cool. This whole podcast is tangenty. The whole thing is just tangents.
I like that though. I love it.
It's cool.
Man, I'm glad you asked me to do this. This is super awesome.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a cool conversation that you wouldn't normally have.
Right.
So anyways, let's keep going on your story. So you were saying you're going to community college, and you actually were doing better there GPA wise, because
work was going well, but just everything else was just not. So then where did you go after that? Did you change schools again? Or I did. So I went to the University of Memphis for one semester. Still working at Chick-fil-A, doing really well work wise and everything. I was at that time. I was working pretty much full time and was taking 1 or 2 classes.
Gotcha.
And still lived with my parents. And
still the drugs and alcohol were very prevalent?
Very, very, very prevalent.
How did you keep that from your parents? Not to give anyone any ideas on how they can keep that.
I just, like I said, it came with who I was at the time. Just a liar.
Yeah, just a total liar and a manipulator.
Just deceiving everybody.
Wow.
It was intertwined with everything. Then my parents, finally, after they found out I bombed, they also found out. It was kind of like one domino effect, one thing led to another, and they started between, pieces together. I think a part of it was they were talking to some of their friends their children kind of struggle with the same thing, oh, this is what happened. I'm oh, might be what happening.
Yeah.
Then I kind of came out and I said, you know what, I feel like this is an issue.
Yeah, that's cool.
Which, and I'll go ahead and interject that because this is also very huge. That right there is like the first very keystone step. If you're struggling, we all struggles, whether it's video games, working too much, gambling, drugs, alcohol. I feel like drugs and alcohol. I mean, it's definitely sin is sin, bad thing is bad things. I feel like drugs and alcohol get a worse rep because they're less socially acceptable than like video games.
Yeah, but video games can be a huge addiction.
But I mean, it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think video games seem very tame because they're typically, you think of kids playing them.
Right, you don't think of like prison or people, dying or...
Yeah, you don't. But in a weird way, you kind of lose a giant chunk of your life.
Right.
In a way where alcohol you could lose a giant chunk of your life or whatever. Because when you're addicted to video games, you're addicted to being in another world, which is what drugs give you. Like, for example, if you're on psychedelic drugs, you feel like you're in a trip, you're like in another place, you're addicted to that feeling of being somewhere else. And so, when you're playing video games, your brain is releasing all sorts of literal drugs into your brain, dopamine, serotonin, all these crazy pleasure drugs, and it's giving your brain pleasure. And just like you build up a tolerance to drugs, you build up a tolerance to that dopamine release, and you got to play them more and more and more to get that same type of feeling. And that same thing with drugs, once you build up a tolerance, you've got to do more and more and more to get that same high. And so just curious, like obviously drugs can get kind of expensive. Were you basically just spending all your paychecks on
pretty
drugs?
Much. Very large part of it.
So I mean,
and I even got to the point where I was making some money from...
And you were working full time.
Yeah, and I was making some money from doing, things associated with that. But,
yeah. Obviously, if you're doing drugs, selling drugs and being around drugs, it's a big part of that whole culture and community. It's hard to not be. And another weird thing with drugs, I kind of do want to talk about this, at a point, is the decriminalization of drugs. Because another interesting thing is like, when you start doing drugs, you're a criminal. You know what I mean? Like if you're doing hard,
we were talking about.
Yeah, and like we were saying, if you start doing video games, you're not a criminal. Right. There's no legal ramifications.
Drugs and alcohol, that people automatically think of rehab.
Yeah.
Prison and jail.
Yeah, prison and jail is a big thing. And what really people who are on drugs need more than anything, they don't need jail, they need help, and they need rehabilitation and stuff.
Absolutely.
So I mean, I don't know if this is the next logical jump, but so you realized you needed help and you sought out help. So
So
what was that like?
So
that was you actively seeking out help, or was it your parents, or was it both?
Well, after my parents kind of figured out. They kind of came out, okay, why, I've been struggling was alcohol and drug pertain. Then I came out, okay, I have a problem, I need help. And for those of y'all who are listening, that's the first critical step. And the harsh reality is that a lot of people, not trying to discourage people, but statistic-wise and everything, a lot of people don't even make it that far. Yeah. Either they die, they live in jail, prison, or a mental institute for the rest of their lives, literally, or they live with their addiction or alcoholism the rest of their life. Wow. And it's super sad, but it's true.
It's extremely sad and extremely
it's intense and sad for sure, but it's reality. So like I said before, I encourage everybody, if you're struggling with anything, any issues whatsoever, whether good, bad, and ugly, always tell somebody, but especially something pertaining to drugs and alcohol, literally just ask for help, tell somebody. There's no, it's not worth. I know how hard it is. I've been through there, but it's not worth throwing your life away and leaving your loved ones behind. And there's a whole life out there of, being happy, things to literally life. I mean, the sky's the limit to enjoy, and everyone deserves to go through that. But there's almost nothing more paralyzing and crippling than an addiction like that, because I've been through it. So
that's cool. And like you were saying earlier, it's really hard to compare. Like for me, I've never been through an addiction. And so a part of me almost is in some kind of really messed up way, kind of, this isn't the right word, but jealous almost of like your experience of like overcoming something that huge. Like you were saying, like, oh, I've overcome more, so I know more, or I'm cooler, or I'm holier than thou, or whatever. Right. And it is weird how I do have this kind of feeling of like, I've never been addicted to something. I've never overcame something that big in my life. And I almost, in some kind of really messed up way, almost feel like a little bit less than, you know what I mean?
Gotcha.
In a very strange way that for someone like you would, probably, be, again, jealous is not the right word, but envious, I guess, of someone who has not gone through something like that, But definitely, I think you'd agree that going through this has made you a stronger person. 1,000%.
1,000%.
Of course. So let's move on to that. Like, you sought help. Where did you go? What did you do?
Okay, so sought help. I went to an outpatient rehab. We heard through some people.
What does outpatient mean for those who don't know?
Outpatient rehab is a place you go to, and there's, like I said, there's literally thousands and millions of different programs, and all across the country, all across the world, different styles, different formats, some big groups, small groups. Anyways,
but as far as outpatient, what does that mean?
Outpatient rehab is where you go, like inpatient rehab is like where you live there for a period of time, 30, 60, 90 days, a year, 18 months, whatever. Outpatient rehab is where you go. You live somewhere else, whether it's your house or whatever, and you go to a certain place with other people, and you have like a group facilitator, maybe some counseling, have some classes. You attend there, period, like throughout the week, and then you go back home.
Gotcha. So it's kind of like school.
Rehab. Yeah.
Gotcha. And so all rehab is completely voluntary because you're a legal adult. You can't be forced to go there unless it's court mandated, I guess.
Yep, unless if it's court mandated. If it's either that, and you only get an X amount of time in jail or prison versus you get a longer time in jail and prison.
Yeah, makes sense. And so when you're in these outpatient facilities, I mean, I'm sure you could literally go on telling stories for days and days and days of the people you met, the types of experiences and all that stuff. So when you were in this outpatient facility, you were going back to your parents' house? Is that what the deal was?
Yes, at the time I was... Yes, I was living with my parents.
Was it hard to not go back and use again? I mean, obviously it's hard to not, or were you still using it at the time during rehab?
I was. I kind of, because we got drug tested and everything, so I obviously, through the smarts and everything, I knew that I was going to get tested on certain things, but other things were going to be easier to pass, so I'm still kind of BSing my way through there, to be honest.
And like alcohol, for example, it's hard to come up on a test, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are certain levels of tests. Obviously,
a pee test, a hair test.
Yeah, if you're, obviously, if you're drinking, if you're not intoxicated at the time, breathalyzers only get it for that time. But certain tests are expensive, or like way more expensive, and they just use a certain test which would detect certain other things, but they didn't use. That
Makes
would detect
sense.
something like alcohol that wouldn't.
Or like a hair test is really expensive, but it can test for like tons and tons of things. That's very interesting. So,
and just the way I was feeling and stuff,
so you were still being manipulated.
I was still manipulating, letting people know basically what they wanted to hear.
So in
I'm
rehab,
doing so much better. Even
sober.
I was literally dying inside. Like, this has been such a huge help. It really, I mean, it was a help if I allowed it to be, but I didn't allow it to be.
Kind of like school, you didn't apply yourself, so it didn't work for you.
Exactly.
And I think that's how tons of things in life are. It's like, it's not that this thing. It's not that this thing is a failure. It's that you failed the program rather than the program failed you.
Exactly,
kind of thing.
that's it.
So you went into that outpatient rehab. How long was that process?
Outpatient rehab. Ooh, that's a good question. Man, I'm glad we're talking about this stuff. It's refreshing and
it's kind of cool to think about
on the past.
And how much you've overcome.
I think it was 3 months.
Gotcha.
I think it was about 3 months.
So then once you were done with that and you're kind of like, cool, yay, I'm fixed now.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I felt.
But you weren't at all.
I was not.
And you were super dead inside and still
super dead inside still. And it's almost like got a little bit better, but got worse than it was before.
1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
You're getting worse. Still living at my parents' house. And then it got to the point where you can't stay here anymore. Like, you need... you need help. So I actually went to halfway house. And for those, a lot of people who have heard of that or are going through this, they know what that is basically a halfway house is like a safe place where other people, like people are going through the same thing, live, and you have like a group facilitators who gives you tests to make sure that you're staying clean and sober, you're going to meetings, you're going to your job and everything. And I kind of BS my way through that. I BS my way through that too.
Do you think a lot of other people were too in the halfway house?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty typical.
It's just kind of how it goes. Just by strict numbers and percentages, just the way, when you're going through that, just the way you can get.
Yeah, exactly. And you've trained your brain to be so manipulative and not be detected.
That it's literally like I'm waiting for the next time for me to get drunk or high again in order for me to like literally function and go through life.
That's crazy. So did you have a job at this point?
I was still working at Chick-fil-A.
So you were working at Chick-fil-A and you were in the halfway house?
I was at the halfway house, and actually I failed multiple tests, and my butt should have been out there the first time, but I don't know what it was. The house manager, I guess he just thought I was super young. I was like 20 at the time when I entered my first one.
Yeah.
This guy's got his whole life ahead of him, so much potential to give me chance after chance. And then eventually I did do a little bit better for like a short period of time, like 30, 45 days. And then my parents were like, all right, you can come back home. And I did. And then things got really, like, even worse. And I went to the same halfway house that I went to before, but I was there a longer period of time. And actually, there was a period of time at the halfway house, the second time, the same one, where I was doing better. I was going to meetings and everything. And I had a little window of sobriety there. But then all of a sudden, like, I just got super stressed. It got really bad to the point where I had a bad relapse, and I started stealing from the roommates, the guys living at the house.
Wow.
And basically, I got kicked out.
Wow.
And that's where I was
stealing
like...
money or stuff to sell?
Yeah, stealing money and things like that.
And the reason being you just needed to get money to buy more drugs or whatever.
Doing what I was doing. And then it got to the point where... my parents were like, oh my gosh, like, and that was like, at that point I was like the lowest of my life.
Of course.
Literally.
Not to get morbid, but like, did you ever like think about suicide or anything like that? Or was it mainly like...
as low as I was, I can think I can safely say I never got to the point of suicide.
Because you had higher goals for yourself.
Right. But I was like extremely low. Like, honestly, at the point when, y'all are listening, like, just like completely low. Obviously, like, you're at a place, like, trying to kind of word this in a way, you're at a point where you have absolutely no idea like what your purpose is, what you're here on this earth
just
for.
Lost.
Yeah, absolutely lost. And like I feel completely, utterly like a failure, inadequate, not to the point like I said suicidal, but just like I don't even know like why I'm here. Type of a thing, just completely lost. Like I don't even know what the next step. Just rock bottom, basically.
Yeah, and you just were still digging yourself more deep into the hole.
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
In that point, my parents were like, "All right, Davis, we love you." They kind of gave me a tough love. They gave me an ultimatum, which they should have.
You have to.
We love you. We're here for you. We'll literally do anything to help you, but we feel like you need longer, better, more intense help. If you're willing to cooperate, then we'll work with you on this. If not, then we have to just kind of
cut ties.
Cut ties.
Wow.
And they said like literally can't come to our house, like, and basically like everyone I could have probably gone through that I knew through them, they probably would have told them don't let Davis in.
Exactly, because that's just enabling you.
Right. So that's when I came to either a place called Discovery Place outside of Nashville or a place called Hope Quest in Georgia and Woodstock, which is still around. And I decided, I don't know, they kind of left it, my parents actually kind of left it up to me. They kind of helped me, and I helped do research myself. I don't know, I guess I chose Atlanta. Peace up, A-Town. I don't know. I mean, my aunt and uncle live in Atlanta, so I guess just,
nice.
As far as, honestly, I had no idea at the time of me moving to Georgia, but in my mind, I just thought, oh, worst comes to worst, I have family there, people there I know. I don't really know. I mean, my dad has, from where we live, there's some mutual friends who live in Nashville, but just family in Atlanta, in case, worst comes to worst, something happened.
Yeah,
and
makes sense.
Atlanta, I don't know.
That's really cool.
Growing city hub, so I was like, why not? Let's try there.
That's really cool. So when you went to Hope Quest for the very first day, did you visit before you checked in there, or was
I
it
did
like
not.
it was like you did
Literally
some research online?
dropped off, and boom.
Wow. So tell me what that was like. I mean, most people are never going to experience something like that.
Yeah. It was crazy. Like, literally, all the motions, I think all the motions and thoughts that humanly possible to have someone was going through my mind and throughout every inch of me.
And all
like,
you...
literally, just like, I don't know, like, what is next, like... I don't know, like literally, like it was like what I'm describing and how I'm saying it right now, just completely just overwhelmed with just emotions and thoughts. Like I don't even know what the future is going to hold. I was completely freaked out, like literally regretting every single thing that I've done that got me to this point. Like, well, I'm here because of my fault. Like I don't deserve to be here. I'm just grateful that I'm blessed with a family and that God's given me chance after chance after chance.
Yeah,
you know,
that's really,
so,
that's
because I really, honestly, I shouldn't be here right now. Like, I should either, like, not trying to be graphic or trying to glorify or trying, like I said, compare my life to other people or other people in recovery, but I should either be dead, in jail, in prison, or some mental place somewhere, literally.
Yeah, that's really, straight up, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
And most people, like you said, are not fortunate enough where they were
like I said, they're one of those places I just said.
That's really crazy. And statistically, that's where they are.
Yep.
So, I mean, I've heard so many crazy stories about people you met in rehab and, that whole experience. So how long was this inpatient?
90 days.
90 days, which doesn't seem like that long, but like
when
that's
sitting in there, it's a really long time. But when you get out,
in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing.
It's nothing.
It's a summer and a half.
Right.
So, obviously, this is kind of where our stories kind of collide, actually.
Yeah.
So when you were in rehab, when did you meet our friend Taylor?
I met Taylor week 10, week 11. So I was had a couple weeks left to go when he just entered in.
Gotcha. So you're in week 10 and it was how many week program? 12 week?
12-week program. So they have a big thing called Friends and Family Weekend where we met at a church and they literally, all the people going through the program went, and Friends and Family where you make amends, and it's super intense time.
Yeah, I remember hearing some stories about that.
Counseling and everything. But it was super healing, but with that becomes,
really
a lot
intense.
Of emotions intense and everything. A lot of things built over the years that hasn't really been said comes out and things like that. So
that's really
intense. That's where I met Taylor, and from there we just kind of hit it off. Like I love this humor and his passion about life and everything, and just talking to him, it seems like we could relate on some things. Obviously, we're right there at the same age.
Yeah, that's cool.
So
another thing that I wanted to ask was, when you were in rehab, were most of the people older than you?
A lot of people were older.
Young?
There was a few people. There was one guy, maybe two people that were younger than me, and people that were my age, a little bit older, but everyone else was 30s, 40s, 50s, even in their 60s.
And so these guys that were 40, 50, 60, they've probably been in and out of rehab for a long time. In and out of rehab,
have gone through, like I said, not to compare, and harder, it's just different story. Been through the ringer a lot more. Going through jail, prison, been involved. There was even one guy there who's 100% hardcore, in a gang. I mean, he's been through he went through the stories that he told and everything, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah, and pretty much everyone there, most people there are there because of addictions to substances, but there were also other people there that were for addictions for other things.
Drugs, alcohol, sex were the main three that were at the
and not to share anyone else's story out of line or anything like that, but for anyone who's listening, people sometimes wouldn't take a sex addiction to be that serious. They would maybe even say,
I agree.
Dude, you're just a player, man. If you're having sex that much, that's not a problem, man. You're just getting some love, man.
And that was actually one of the many blessings from being in the recovery community in Hope Quest and everything, because it opened my eyes to that particularly, because like I said, that was
You've never seen that.
I never really,
And it's a very taboo subject. You don't really ever hear about people being sex addicts very much, and if you do, you're thinking of some like grody old man or
Right.
something. It's like, but like these are, you know, people your age possibly that are,
Right.
you know, addicted to sex. You know, like I said, not to really share anyone's story, but some people aren't familiar with that, or can, just so people can kind of sympathize with what that is. How, you know, what does it look like to be you know, in that position where you're a sex addict, I guess, because some people just don't really realize what
It's
it's like.
devastating, especially if a lot of these people had like families, like married with kids, and you can imagine the devastating ramifications it had on them.
Definitely.
And just, you know.
And so there, in that case, it's not like you're addicted to having sex with one partner. You're addicted to having just...
And then you got to think about everyone you're participating in those activities with. The people there, I mean, those people might be married. Those people might have kids. Those people have loved ones too. So you're not only hurting yourself, you're hurting them as well.
So probably drugs and alcohol play a part in some of that as well too.
Absolutely.
Probably hitting the bars and just trying to meet
100%.
women and
Drugs and everything, definitely.
And in your program, Hope Quest, there was girls and guys, right? Yeah, you can have some, dude. You can, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, you're good. So was it like girls and guys?
It was girls and guys.
Yeah, gotcha. So how was that? Like, were people trying to hook up and stuff in there, like summer camp?
Not necessarily that particularly, but just definitely some flirtation, talking, for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, like, for people that are, you know, listening, rehab probably is nothing like what they're thinking. What is a typical day in rehab actually look like? Like, what do you do in rehab? You just sit around and talk about your feelings?
I mean,
like, what do you do?
There's different rehabs out there. There's millions under the sun, different formats. The rehab that I went to and other rehabs that sound like that are very similar. We went to a bunch of like these classes every day, like 5 days a week.
So it's kind of like school, sort of.
Yes, just about addiction, getting the root of the problem, you know, the whole cycle, you know, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, that sort of thing. And then we would have a period of our, you know, where we would call real life, where we talk about our feelings, like I feel about because.
Yeah.
We would journal every day and stuff. So
I remember you were telling me about this one experience. So the I feel about because blah, blah, blah. And one of those, in that exercise, you can't say like, I feel that, like, you couldn't. What was something you couldn't say in that?
You couldn't say, I feel cool, I feel fine.
You would have to say, like,
yeah,
I
you
feel...
have to, okay, fine, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like,
and you just have to really dig down deep into how you
explain,
feel.
Exactly.
That's interesting. So, like, not on a surface level, like, how do you feel, man? Like,
for sure.
What are you feeling? What's weighing on you? Like, so I remember specifically there was a funny thing you were telling me about. There's this one guy that said, like, I feel that this guy is an asshole.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
So was there like sometimes where people would fight in those types of meetings? I'm sure tensions are super high.
There was definitely times where tensions were high, and there was actually a few what would have been fights that were broken out, like the house and like the class and everything.
So obviously everyone is going through withdrawals. Tensions are high. Everyone's really just, no one wants to be there, you know, like... So tensions are super high. People are pissed at each other,
right?
You know. And I remember you were telling me typically you guys would like play volleyball or something during the day and stuff like that.
And that definitely helped. And we were a lady out of the goodness of her heart, you know, would come and help, you know, us exercise and everything like that. And, you know, give us stuff to do, you know, for to decompress because, you know, we're going through a lot, you know, mentally.
Yeah, working out is really helpful for sure.
So
and playing some volleyball, that's cool. So, like I said, you kind of met our mutual friend Taylor, and that's how we met. And then once you graduated from the program, you went and lived in another halfway house, right?
So they have, actually the whole program is up to 9 months. So the inpatient part is 3 months. Continuing care, which is basically halfway houses affiliated with people who only went through the program. Gotcha. So they had like, at the time 2, and now there's just 1, but there was 2 halfway houses affiliated through Hope Quest. Where I lived with other guys, and I did that for 6 months, and Taylor and I actually were roommates. So
that's
it was
awesome.
Where we really become like really close, really good friends, and now we're like, he's one of my best friends and everything. So
that's awesome.
Really awesome how God set that in place.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So kind of back to the rehab thing. It's like it was like a 12-step kind of program. Is that what you guys did, or did you adopt that, or did you use that?
That was part of it. There's other programs that were strictly 12-step based, and that was part of it, but it was also, spiritually, based as well.
Yeah.
So.
And this is something that's definitely hotly debated, especially with people who aren't familiar with, addiction, drugs, blah, 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 just looking at it from the outside. Some people will say, oh, I went to this program and now I'm not an alcoholic. And then some people will say, I'm an alcoholic and on a day-to-day basis, I choose to abstain.
Right.
What kind of camp do you fall into?
That's funny you say that, because recovery is very, very broad. Some people are as far on the spectrum as they're, had an extreme problem with drugs and alcohol and everything, and they're literally able to just go to the rehab maybe, or go to a few meetings and literally drop it, and that's it.
Yeah.
Some people have to go to the rehab. Some people have to go to the meetings for a while. I was definitely one of those where I had to go to the rehab.
And having, community.
Get involved in AA and everything like that for a period of time.
That's really cool. So like AA is built around the 12-step program,
yes,
right?
AA is Alcoholics Anonymous, and the other big one is NA, Narcotics Anonymous. Those are the two biggest, but they have like
millions
literally
of members.
Dozens under the sun.
Oh yeah,
as far
yeah.
as big groups.
So briefly, just like for people who don't know, I really am not super familiar with the 12 steps. Like, what are the 12 like? What are the 12 steps? I mean, we don't have to go into super depth. I'm sure you could literally talk for hours.
The 12 steps is basically like an outline of, it's a big community where people who are, drug addicts and alcoholics. And what's cool too is AA is not only for people who struggle with alcohol. I had people there who, I feel like people who go to AA struggle with alcohol in some capacity, but I knew people who struggle more on the drug side who went to AA. And vice versa, people struggle with the alcohol side, went to NA. It's just what meeting they found
that worked for them or whatever.
Better.
Yeah.
But 12 Steps is basically the guy who wrote the big book, what they call it, the Alcoholics Anonymous book. He had like this, what he calls this formula for success and recovery, which was outlined in 12 steps. Admitted I needed a problem, making amends, writing, an inventory of how you harmed other people, that sort of thing, which is, I believe, not necessarily, I feel like, is necessary in that particular format to recover, but I feel like to get full healing and really to enjoy life has to be done in some way. It doesn't necessarily have to be through that.
So take an inventory of people that you've harmed, meaning like
and people who've
my
harmed
parents.
You. Literally understand my list was like a couple hundred because I went in like super depth with it.
Wow.
But, yeah.
That's crazy when you actually think about it. You have to sit down and
think about like literally everyone
have...
through your life, So.
Wow. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, what do? You make a list of all the people that you've harmed, that have harmed you.
And then you tell somebody about it. In the 12-step program, you have someone you call a sponsor, where you call every day. And
that's someone who's
hold you
successfully gone
and
through
who
recovery.
has a little bit more recovery time than you, and just a little bit more life experience than you, and literally just become really good friends with them and everything. And you literally just spill your guts, basically, and just tell them deepest, darkest everything.
That's really cool.
So,
that's empowering, too.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
And I actually had the pleasure of being sponsored for a couple guys as well.
That's really awesome. And I'm sure that being a sponsor is really difficult as well because
it is, because you grow close to people, and that's the thing that's tough about recovery that a lot of people don't realize is you go to rehab with people, like you're literally there with people and you're hearing their deepest, darkest stuff. So you're building relationships with people on a different level.
Yeah.
But it's tough at the same time because statistically a lot of people aren't going to make it. Or if they do, but it's not going to be the same time frame as you. So you might be doing well and being able to stay clean and sober when it might take them, who knows, it might take them 5 or 10 years down the road before they start to get it.
Yeah, makes sense. That's very interesting. So you kind of went through this 12-step program. You were going to AA meetings, and you're saying at the AA meetings you're kind of sharing your deepest, darkest secrets and stuff that.
No,
with
just
your sponsor.
with sponsor, but at the meeting.
What do you do at the meetings? Because I think a lot of people have the whole image of like,
So,
hi, my name's Davis.
Yeah, hey,
I'm an
David,
alcoholic.
Hey, Davis.
Does that really happen?
It does.
That's funny.
Yeah, no, it
That's
does.
kind of cool.
Yeah, no, it's cool. So many, there's, like I said, I've been to so many different meetings and formats. They have an open discussion meeting, which I like. They have one where
you can all just kind of talk about stuff. That's cool.
And then they'll have like a panel discussion of people who have like X amount of time, 5-10 years more sobriety. Speaker meetings are probably my favorite, and actually I had the pleasure of speaking at a couple of meetings, which was really empowering. I was able to, anything I could do to help other people, and also it helps me in return. I can and I will, because I've been through it, so I'm able to, especially something as deep and dark and hard as that, I want to give back and make an impact on.
That's really cool. Yeah, of course. So you were still living in the halfway house, going to a lot of AA meetings, you were living with Taylor and all this stuff, and then basically our paths kind of crossed while you were living in the halfway house.
Yeah.
We became friends because we all got, we could literally talk for days about Vima, which is a company that we were all involved in, a network marketing company. But to wrap it up in a nutshell, basically, it was a company where we were very empowered. We were, like independent distributors of this product called Vima. We could say a lot of positive things. You could say a lot of negative things about that experience. I would say it was a huge net positive in my life.
Absolutely.
Because it gave me a lot of confidence and a lot of
tools and outside the box knowledge of what I didn't about college and just life in general, really, that I had never really thought of.
Yeah, and that's an interesting perspective. So after that, you haven't gone back to school, right? And
yeah, so honestly,
not in a formal sense.
had no idea that I was going to kind of turn a new leaf and start over in Georgia until about week 9 or 10.
Wow. Of the program.
So that's cool. When I kind of decided, you know what? I have a couple friends back home in Memphis, long-term friends.
But let's start a new leaf and
let's see what happens.
Start a new life here.
I felt like God was leading me towards that.
That's really cool.
So I got a job got out, lived in the halfway house, got a job at Chick-fil-A.
And you worked there for like almost 2 years, something like that, right?
2 years.
Cool. And you were like a manager.
Yeah.
And I know that, and you like opened the store, and you worked there until the afternoon, and
it was a lot.
It was a lot of work.
Great company. Work. I mean, I love everything that Chick-fil-A stands for, but it was one of those things where I'm just
had to move on.
I absolutely had no idea what I wanted to do. Honestly, college, I had about a year and a half, if that, worth of credits, and I didn't want to invest the time and money in something I wasn't truly passionate about. Yeah. And like I said, not to promote people not going to college. College is great. You just have to find your thing. Like, if you feel like it's great for you, and you want to build connections and you build tools and really learn from it, you can if you allow it to. But I just wasn't allowing to. And
my thing right now with college, I've definitely said some pretty ridiculous stuff about college in the past when I wasn't. Some very negative things. I think that college definitely has its place as well. But I think that in today's society and in today's world, people really need to take a hard look of why they're taking on, number one, such a large financial burden if they are incurring that. Right. I know that, I don't know how much like student loans or anything if you had to take out. I think you were fortunate enough that your parents were pretty much paying for most of your school. Is that right?
Yeah, no, they were.
That's awesome. That's a huge blessing. So. Yeah. So like, but some people, they're incurring a huge financial burden for something they're not even entirely sure that they want to do or are going to use or anything really.
Right.
And I think that in today's society, there's so many other options, but I could literally talk for days about that. So anyways, we were in Vima. We were, and that empowered both of us so many ways. So this is kind of an interesting thing. What was the first, be brutally honest with me, what was the first impression you had of me when you first met me?
I thought you were awesome. I'm like, I love this guy. He's
that was the first thing.
No, seriously, because you're similar to me in a lot of ways, like bubbly, like outgoing, have tons of energy. Our sense of humors are obviously like there.
Totally.
We think the same stuff.
We can make each other laugh for literally
hours.
Yeah,
but
just get us started on some YouTube videos.
Oh my gosh, it's insane. But man, I thought you were awesome. I'm like,
that's
this
cool.
guy. I literally thought, this guy's definitely going to be, through Taylor and everything. I would like to get to know this guy more.
That's awesome. Sure. That's awesome. And I definitely, when I first met you, I was like, I definitely knew I knew that you weren't just like the typical dude, you know, like sometimes you meet people and they're just so like basic,
bland
human beings.
Like, he's a nice guy, but he's a nice guy. You know?
Exactly.
Cool guy's a chill day. What is that video?
Cool guy. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like some guys, they're just literally just basic humans. And there's some people that you meet that are just different. And I knew that there was something different about you. And from the beginning, I knew that you were going through recovery and stuff because I knew Taylor. I actually met Taylor through a friend who got him into Vima, and we actually connected through Vima, that company. And like I said, I really don't want to get too much into that company just because that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. Mm-hmm. But that's a really cool thing. And actually, me and Davis ended up living, fast forward kind of a lot of time, but we ended up living together in the house that we're in right now. Me and Taylor actually got this little townhouse here in Kennesaw. Taylor found the place, and I moved in, and we basically we made it our Vima hub, and it was our spot where we kind of made headquarters. And Davis moved in at a certain point, which was really cool. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we had a great time living together.
Oh, absolutely. I still live here and I love it.
Yeah. So this is a topic that I was thinking about earlier, and not to go back so much, but I've been thinking about this a lot, and it's about the laws and regulations surrounding drugs and alcohol and all this kind of stuff. Our friend Taylor, he suffers from a lot of different things. He suffers from seizures and epilepsy and all this kind of stuff. And I know Taylor's listening to this right now. And I'm going to definitely have Taylor on the podcast because he has a crazy story.
Oh, he's an insanely awesome story.
Yeah, and I know Taylor's out there listening to this. So much love to my homie out there in Denver.
Love you, Taylor.
In Denver, Colorado. But, Taylor's somebody that benefits from the use of medical marijuana and medical THC. And in Georgia and much of the world and many other states, marijuana is criminal. It's a criminal offense to have this substance that actually, if you argue that has no medical positivity, then you literally are denying the science and denying, you're literally closing your eyes to the obvious blatant facts that there is medicinal qualities to that drug.
Right.
And my biggest thing is I think that, when you were seeking out drugs and finding people to purchase drugs from and stuff, I'm sure that you were having to go through some very sketchy, very dangerous situations.
That I never want to go back to relive.
Exactly, for sure. And that's where I think that because drugs, hard drugs, cocaine, pills, different drugs are illegal, it almost fuels that underground community. Whereas if drugs like that were made decriminalized, not necessarily sold, not necessarily regulated like marijuana is in Denver, but like, for example, if you got caught with a whole bunch of cocaine, instead of being arrested and put in jail, I think that person should be offered help, right?
I agree.
Because obviously if they're abusing this substance and selling it, there's a big problem. Mm-hmm. And you can't blame people for selling drugs because it's supply and demand.
Right.
You're taking a risk. People want this stuff.
Right.
Whether it's moral of them to use or sell or not, that's kind of up to them,
Yeah.
And it's very hard for me to agree with a government that wants to put regulations around me obtaining a plant that grows out of the ground, especially in the case of marijuana. And I think that going through, a lot of, the program you went through was a Christian program. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of programs and stuff would frown upon the use of marijuana. but might not frown against taking like an Advil for for pain relief or something.
Right.
I don't know. This is a really hard question, and this is one of those kind of spectrum things that we've been talking about this whole time, where like it's not a black or white issue. I've kind of shared my thoughts a little bit on this. Where do you kind of fall, and don't be afraid of, I would say offending someone or anything like that, because I think that on issues like this, you're always going to get people that agree and people that disagree.
Absolutely.
Where do you kind of fall on, I guess, decriminalization? How should the system work in your opinion, and what can we do as a society to make this better?
That's a good question. As far as marijuana itself, again, I'm not promoting it or anything like that. Kind of what I said about the other substances applies. If you're able to
use it in a positive way,
then go for it. Honestly,
I agree.
However, if it comes to the point where you're breaching it, where
and you're using it as an escape,
using it as an escape, or if it starts affecting other areas of life, then don't.
I agree. And my thing is, like, I don't think it's really the government's place to make that call for you.
I agree.
That's my biggest thing is, like, there's so many dangerous things. The government shouldn't be telling me what I can and can't do. And I don't even really use marijuana. It's illegal in Georgia anyways, but like it's easy to obtain. But it's not something that I'm seeking out on a consistent basis. But if I wanted to, I could go skydiving. That's a very dangerous activity. If I wanted to, I could go mountain biking. That's a very dangerous activity. If I wanted to, I could go drive my car. That's a dangerous activity in and of itself. I'm driving literally a death machine that's capable of going very, very fast.
Right.
I could drive it into a tree and die. Mm-hmm. But the government, because obviously it's very hard to compare. It's not comparing the same thing. It's, it's comparing two totally different things.
Apples and oranges, right.
But I think that there's obviously regulations around how and where and when you can drive a car, and there's licenses you can obtain to drive a car. And that's a weapon in and of itself. Obviously, we saw how in France, in Nice, a guy drove a van into a crowd of people and killed tons of people. It's a killing machine, but we're not making cars legal. And I think the government, tends to say, well, these drugs are bad, and so they should be illegal because no one should be using them. They are bad.
Right.
And that's kind of tying into what I was talking about earlier is like a drug. However you want to define drugs, it's not really bad or good. It's just a thing. And how you use it or abuse it is up to you.
That's true.
What are your kind of, obviously it's a very complicated subject. As far as decriminalization versus legalization, what are your kind of thoughts? I mean, obviously if a criminal, if someone's caught with a bunch of drugs, they get put in jail. When that person gets out of jail, all they know is that world of jail and drugs and all that. Right. They're probably going to, statistically, they're going to go right back into that.
Right.
And I think that it's also going to create someone that hates the system, that hates the man, that hates the government, and to kind of rebel against that, they're going to go right back exactly to what they were doing. Obviously rehab helped you. Do you think that instead of jailing people, we should offer them help?
Absolutely, 100%.
Obviously that's a very hard question, but do you have any ideas on how maybe that could even be implemented in society? I know it's that
would be very hard, especially in the masses with people. Definitely. Because, a lot of times when you're dealing with drugs and alcohol, you're dealing with damaged property, stealing, assault, even killing someone, things like that.
But
if it's just like a possession thing, or like, depending on it's a very situational thing.
Definitely.
So I think that's
it's not black and white.
I think that's one of the things where the biggest issues is. But I definitely believe that would definitely have some type of system. Like I said, implementing it, I would have to. That's a good question. I haven't really given that much thought. But I think, if there was some type of system to kind of filter out who's in the jails and who's in the prisons for what, and depending on their situations, sending them to meetings and rehabs, because not everybody... There's definitely people who deserve to be in jail and in prison.
I think so, too.
And there's certain people who, I guess, kind of got screwed over, or they just need help. Like you said, they just need to be loved on. They just, like I said, need to be heard out. They need help.
They need help.
So...
Yeah, I agree. I think the war on drugs is fueling many of the problems that we were kind of talking about, stolen properties, damage, blah, blah, blah. If drugs were decriminalized, not necessarily in a way that would make them a positive thing, and drugs, again, is a very broad spectrum of things we could be talking about. Heroin versus weed, they're two very different things. But I think if there was some sort of decriminalization, meaning someone who's using, someone who's a heroin addict, they have a problem that needs help. Mm-hmm. Rather than jail time. Like, I would not look at that person as a criminal. I look at that as a person who desperately needs some help. And that's just where our system is so broken, because statistically, if you look at it, we look back on history and we say, wow, at one point in our country, black people were slaves, and that was a huge issue. But in today's society, we actually have more prisoners, more people locked up in a cage than there were slaves back in the day, which is crazy to think about that.
It is.
And think about how huge of an issue that was back then. And think about how many people are, like you said, jailed unfairly, or maybe they were just on some kind of minor possession, or maybe they, were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's honestly sickening to me that we're locking these people up like animals in a cage and isolating them from society and saying, you shouldn't have been there, you made that mistake, you don't deserve this, you get away from us, these good people over here. Meanwhile, like you said, it's very hard to separate, someone who's addicted to video games versus someone who's addicted to drugs. One person's a criminal, and one person's, not even, someone would say they don't even have a problem, but maybe they literally could be just as broken, just as, they could be having the same kind of psychological thing, but they're just addicted to a different thing. And it sucks because one thing is a substance that somehow over years and years of puritanical society and whatever, we've decided that if you've got a hold of one of these substances, you're going to jail, buddy. You're getting locked up. Mm-hmm. And I just think that's super, super, super messed up. And I think we're going to look back on this time where, I don't know, man. It's just a weird, weird situation where we have so many people in jail. It's very, very messed up. And people don't talk about it.
Right.
And, you've met people that were in jail and rehab and stuff, right? Too.
Oh, yeah.
People, like you said, that are older,
mm-hmm.
in and out of jail. From your experience, like, people going in and out of jail, going to jail, does that ever help a person, or is it always a negative?
I feel like it could potentially, in some cases, like, every now and then, like in a blue moon case, might like put the fear of God in somebody, but in vast majority of cases, in situations like we're talking about, I would say negative, because it's kind of saying, oh, you're a defective person, you're not effective to society, what are you contributing, like you're a piece of crap, what are you here for?
You're junkie.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And that just
makes
it worse, because that will make them, I would argue, that would make, obviously make people want to continue what they're doing and just go off the deep end even more.
Yeah.
Because they feel like, well, like, I don't like know who else, Yeah. Because I've been there. I was like, well, I don't know what else to do, so I'll just revert to what I'm doing,
Exactly. All you know is all you know. So
that's it.
Once I get out of jail, I'm going to go right back to using. Every day when you're in jail, I'm sure you're just thinking constantly about, oh, damn, I can't wait to get back out so I can just freaking use again. I can just freaking get that needle back in my arm. I can hit that bottle again. I can, they're just, And because when you're in rehab, you're separated from those types of things. You know, some people would kind of compare it to jail, where you're literally disconnecting from society on such a hard level, but you're attending these classes, you're learning about yourself, you're talking about your feelings. I have a very strong feeling that in jail, people aren't talking about their feelings too much.
Probably not.
You're trying to survive.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a very, very hard and sad thing that's people don't talk about enough.
Right.
In today's day and age. But let's, I think we can kind of wrap this up pretty soon, but I think, what do you think, I kind of said earlier, if there's someone out there struggling, seek help. That was your advice to them. Mm-hmm. What would you say, to people that are, in that type of situation right now? They're listening to this, they are, dealing with this, or maybe they're in rehab and they've somehow gotten a hold of this podcast, or maybe they're getting out of rehab. Like, what kind of advice would you have for anybody in this type of situation?
Well, first is, like I said, don't be afraid to tell somebody. I wish, going back, I would have told people sooner, and I think almost in some shape or form, everybody who has or is going through that maybe wishes because we all want to have feel like we all want to be safe. So find that person and be able to be open and honest, even though it's not easy. But
if someone feels like they don't know anyone that's, a safe person to talk to, where can someone seek help? Would you say they go to an AA meeting or an NA meeting?
Go to a meeting. Like, seriously, you can go on Google, and literally there's so many AA, NA, CA, HA, so many meetings under the sun.
Cool.
Go to a church. And also, I know this is way, 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 way easier said than done, but, like, don't give up hope. Just keep going, keep on living life, and because there's so much that life has to offer that it's just not worth continuing going down that path. Like, trust me, I've been through that road. I know how hard it is. But if you just move forward and start doing, and literally, if you haven't, like the smallest, most microscopic ounce of hope, then it can only go up from there.
That's awesome.
Like, even if you think like light at the end of the tunnel is like literally on the other side of the universe, but if there's something like the tiniest spark there, sometimes that's all you need. That's
really cool. One last, there's actually two last things that I want to touch on. Number one would be where you're at now and what you're doing now, and how long you've been sober and stuff like that. But first, I kind of want to talk about, I kind of touched on it earlier, and I feel like we didn't explore it as much as I kind of wanted to talk about it. But as far as, some people will say alcoholism is a disease that you have forever. It's almost like you've contracted this thing, or maybe you're born with it. And some people argue that, alcoholism is something that happens to you and you can overcome it and you can rid yourself of that. Would you consider yourself an alcoholic now that you've been sober?
I would. Everybody's story is different. Like I was saying, recovery is such a broad thing. I mean, I know so many people in recovery who won't be able to touch anything else for the rest of their life. I know some people who don't drink for a period of time and then they have a drink every now and then and they're fine. Some people I know might not drink or do alcohol, but they still smoke weed every now and then and they're fine. It's literally so broad. I know for myself that I'm definitely will not partake in any drugs or alcohol for the rest of my life. It's just not an option. 1, 2, and I think this is a big part of it for that a lot of people are overlooked, because what you said is valid. Will I ever be able to? But my thing is, like I said, I have no problem with, and don't go out of the way to be in those scenes, but I mean, people, if you want to drink,
you're not judgmental. If you want to drink,
have a good time. Like I said,
as
long as you don't cross that threshold that I was talking about earlier. However, if you've been through what I've been through, and I've been so happy. I mean, of course, not every day is peaches and cream. I don't, piss excellence every day.
Almost every day.
Fart sunshines almost every day. But, I've been happy and joyous and free. Actually, July 4th this year will be 4 years.
I was just about to ask you that. That's amazing.
By the grace, literally, not me. There's absolutely, like, if I walked in my first day rehab and you were to ask me, do you think I would have been sober? You're out of your mind. Like, completely God's grace, God's strength every day, and amazing people and family and friend support throughout the way, 100%.
That's really awesome. So 4 years in July. You're
4th.
Coming up on 4 years.
4 years.
That's amazing.
It's flown by. I'm like, oh my gosh. But
that's really crazy. And like 4 years in the grand scheme of life, you know, I've been thinking about this concept a lot recently of like, a lot of times you think of your life as like 100 years. Hopefully you could live to be 100, you know?
Right.
And 4 years is only 4% of that, you know?
Right.
But 4% is a lot when you're comparing your whole life, but also you're only 26. So 4 years is a big chunk of that, especially when you were using for so long. I mean, you were using for what, 4 years?
I think it was
5
like
years?
2 or 3 years.
Oh, okay. So you've been sober longer than you were using. Wow. It's amazing. That's really commendable, bro. Like,
thank you.
Can't say enough. I think everyone would acknowledge that that's an amazing thing. For someone who's going through that, you know, maybe let's say yesterday was the last time they drank and they're thinking about drinking right now. What carries you through to that next day of saying, you know what, fuck it. Yesterday I drank, might as well drink today. Like, what is that? What carries you on to that next day and the next day and the next day and the next day?
It's hard because literally, I mean, physically you have the withdrawals and everything, but to me the harder part was mentally trumps that a million times over because literally that's all we know. You have a good day, I'm going to drink and use. I have a bad day, I'm going to drink and use. I aced my test, my car broke down. Like, literally any life circumstances, you're just going to do what you're going to do because that's how we function. Because, I mean, the thought's right. I mean, there was points, I mean, the first 3 to 6 months of me getting sober was like one of the hardest times. Besides me actually like going through my rock bottom, like that was the next hardest. Like my first 3 to 6 months of rehab were insanely difficult. Like the hardest thing I've had to go through, and I'm sure like once I start having a family and go forward in my career, move forward, I'll go through many other hard times. But I know for a fact this will definitely be in the top
for sure.
But I would say there are so many times where I like literally couldn't sleep and literally constantly beating you at your mind. Like I want everyone who's listening to who, if you're going through this, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, just to kind of imagine, like if there's ever something that you truly, truly desperately wanted, that times like 1,000 all the time, every second. That's like piercing throughout your whole being.
So like every second of your day, like you're thinking, I want to go drink and use.
Literally. I mean, from my experience, if it wasn't for God's grace and His strength, that's what carried me through. Outside of that, just so many things. Like, it didn't necessarily have to be AA, but I would get involved in some type of group. Like, with some type of people, whether it's church, whether it's group, or if you don't even, joining some church or group is not your thing, then seek your friends or people. There's going to be people out there who are going to understand and listen and be there for you for accountability. For me, at some point I was calling 20, 30 people a day. Like, wow, hey, yeah. I literally called this person 20 minutes ago, but between now and then it's happened, like the urge has happened again, like talking to you. But the biggest thing that I feel like people overlooked is asking, despite what you're going through, and you do need to take care of yourself, yes, but invest in other people. Get outside of yourself, because you really think about it, alcoholism and drug addiction is a self-centered thing, 110%. So if you override that by doing acts of kindness and getting out of yourself, like when I was involved in my meeting, I helped, get involved and take down chairs and everything. But literally it could be simple as calling somebody and asking how their day is going and listening to somebody. Cool. Doing literally things, like I said, to get outside of yourself. Goes light years. That's awesome. And two, obviously I'm more energetic than 99.9% of the population, but I would say do not sit and stew in it, because you're going to lose.
Get out of the house.
You're going to lose. Get out of the house, do something. Go work out. Go for a hike. Get a hobby. Do something.
Go to the gym.
Yep.
Gym's a big one, I feel like.
It is.
Because that's another thing is like, getting your body right is huge. If
For
you can be
sure.
proud of that and building that, that can be a building block of so many mental things. Kind of to come full circle, in the beginning we were talking about Philmont. How do you think, obviously Philmont was physically demanding and mentally demanding because, like I said, you couldn't quit. You literally could not quit. Did you ever, like, when you were going through the whole, when you were going through the struggle of getting sober and stuff, did you ever think about Philmont and kind of think about, like, I overcame something that big back then, I can do this now?
Yeah, kind of.
Did you ever make that comparison?
Yeah,
or like,
no.
Really?
I actually did. I'm like, well, because I thought to myself, I've never gone through anything hard before this. Well, I've done Philmont and a few other things, difficult
compared to
times I had
Philmont,
before.
Philmont was a piece of cake compared to getting sober, though, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But
And it's interesting, like, so you were kind of saying before, sorry, I keep going back to this, but you're saying kind of, so you can't cure yourself of being an alcoholic is basically, you're an alcoholic,
right.
and that's just how it is. Now that you're 4 years out, do you still get the urge to drink?
honestly, that's a miracle.
Not really.
Not really. Like,
That's cool.
every once in a blue moon, I might think, oh,
Blue Moon? Want to drink a Blue Moon?
Nice. Funny guy. Andrew and I are big on puns. So.
Yeah.
Every once in a while I might think, oh, I wonder, how much, but I immediately say a quick prayer and the thought goes away super quickly.
That's cool.
And I'm super grateful for that. But back to being able to, because I know we were talking about that, and I'm actually glad, because you saying that helped me remind me of this. Will I ever drink or do anything else again? No. Number one, because I know the way I am. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. As far as me, like I said, people say that, and I agree to that to a certain extent. However, at the same time, recovery is such a broad spectrum. Because I know so many people in recovery, and I know people who are able to do that, and they're fine. But you can't just say, oh, because this person's able to have a drink every now and then,
they're cured.
Or just because they're able to have a drink every now and then doesn't mean that they... obviously, clearly in their past, that they were never an alcoholic. That's not true. You know what I mean?
Of course.
However, with me, it goes more than that. It's, like I said, not judgmental. Like, you can have a drink, fine. But it's like, for me, it's like, why would I want to and try to enhance and change the way I feel
if great?
If I feel great already. Like, I tell people I'm high and drunk on life, which is kind of funny, but I really am.
That's really interesting. And it's crazy to think about, like, once you kind of have your ducks in a row and you kind of, you feel like you kind of got a grip on life a little bit, just no one really has it all figured out. No one's got it all figured out. No one's life is perfect. But, once you're in a place where, you feel some stability, you feel some comfort in where you're at, I think that you're right. You can be kind of high and drunk on life because kind of going back to that whole thing about like how our body is kind of made up of drugs, like when you're in those positions, your body is releasing things in your brain. You are, receiving chemicals from that your brain's producing that makes you feel happy, that makes you feel fulfilled, that make you feel certain ways. And so in a way you kind of are high and drunk on life, which is awesome. Really. So. And I know I said we were going to wrap this up, but I keep having like these crazy things.
No, I love this. I could talk all night. I know you could too.
Yeah, literally. It's past midnight here, but we're literally still going. One thing that I was thinking of is, oh shoot, I lost it. We were talking about releasing chemicals in the brain, things, your life's going good, all this kind of stuff. What was I going to say?
It's all good. Remember. Story of my life. I'm like,
Had a good thought. It'll come back. But so now, Davis, you've been sober for almost 4 years, and you got into real estate.
Yes.
Well, talk to me. Just why'd you go real estate? What was your motivation?
Okay, well, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had no idea. Through college and kind of through my whole experience, even while I was working at Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is a great company and everything, and people ask me, would you want to take the next step and move up in the company? And I love everything Chick-fil-A stands for. I just couldn't see myself truly being passionate about that and kind of got burned out and tired of it. So honestly, all I knew is, I'm interested in a lot of things. I love people. I love customer service. Somewhat business-minded. Well, I am business-minded. The idea of kind of working my own hours and everything fascinates me, working from kind of where I want to. I have a buddy who used to be an agent. I think he's currently has his license kind of on hold right now, but he used to be an agent at the West Cobb Keller Williams office. And he said, man, you should look into getting the residential real estate. I'm like, okay. And, obviously, really quickly, side note, my dad is in commercial real estate in Tennessee, Cushman, Wakefield. So, not about the nitty-gritties, about the business, like building cones and appraisals and CMAs and what contracts look like. But as far as I grew up, he emphasized me the importance of building relationships, investing in people, being a good friend, that sort of thing. So, I knew what that looked like. But I also had a really good friend whose sister is an agent at the Dunwoody office, and she's with a mega agent down there, she basically said, once you get your license, I love your energy and your work ethic, and I just see a lot of potential in you. You have a position on my team. So I looked at those two offices, and then my teacher in my real estate classes, he and her wife, real estate agents at the Woodstock office, Realty Partners, and I was really impressed with the broker and the team leader and everything. And Woodstock, I spent a lot of time there. I was like, why not? And then I got connected to Aaron Wilson and Jason Wilson. They're absolutely phenomenal. Grateful to be working with them. And here I am doing residential real estate, Keller Williams.
That's really awesome. So I don't know too much about real estate, but I know that you had to pass like a test and all that kind of stuff.
Oh my gosh, I'm horrific at
and I know that was kind of like that was a big milestone for you, is like passing the test and all that. Mm-hmm. For anyone who's like looking to get into real estate, what kind of advice can you give them, or would you encourage it for people? Who would you encourage it for? Who would you discourage it for? Absolutely. What kind of hardships has it been for you? All that kind of stuff.
The why of why I'm doing real estate is customer service. But if you really think about it, like the biggest financial investment that pretty much everybody will make is a home. Mm-hmm. Like American dream, or really just a dream. Who doesn't want to start a family, build a legacy, live in a house? I mean, I can't think of anyone who doesn't want that. So making that a reality for people, saving people time and money. So with that, and being able to be a part of that is why I'm passionate about, being in real estate. With that being said, I feel like it would benefit anybody to just be more knowledgeable about real estate. I'm not necessarily saying doing that full time and getting a full income from doing that and spending, all your energy in that, but at least becoming more knowledgeable in it.
I definitely want to learn more.
The homes, like, why not? So that's why I would recommend anybody out there who's on the fence about getting your license, I would say go for it. Yeah. Just obviously you have to pay a few fees and everything, keep it active in education and everything. But the amount of doors that opens is absolutely insane. And even for particularly investors, a lot of investors actually don't have their license, because if you buy and sell properties on behalf of yourself, you don't need a license. If you buy and sell properties on behalf of somebody else, you do need a license, which is why investors are obviously, buying, flipping, or getting rental properties are doing it for themselves, and a lot of people just don't want to take the time to
go through
class, get their license, and to keep up with it. But I would say why not? Because you have access to the MLS and other tools the general public doesn't have access to, especially in this off-the-chart seller's market right now when properties go extremely quickly. And plus, even if you want to get a referral, you can't get paid a referral if you don't have a license.
Gotcha.
And if you have a license, and if you solely want to invest, if your sole intention was to invest, someone who's looking to buy or sell a house, so you have a license, boom, cool, you get to help them out.
That's really cool.
So
that makes sense. Well, cool, dude. Well, let's wrap this thing up. Where can people find you if they want to, if they live in the Atlanta area and they want to connect with you, they want to buy a house from you, they want to use you as their dude, the real estate agent, how do they find you? What can they do?
Well, they can find me on Facebook. I actually have a series of videos that I'm kind of becoming kind of up and coming. I do a series of open house videos, and y'all stay tuned because I want to definitely increase that as far as doing that more frequently, the quality of that, not just open houses, but other aspects of the business. And eventually I hope to do a kind of a life/business vlog.
That's awesome,
What
man.
actually Taylor's kind of implementing.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
So you can find me on Facebook, Davis Jenkins, or, Instagram, Davis Jenkins 21, Snapchat, Davis Jenkins 21. You can literally, I'll go ahead and give this. I'm literally an open book. You can call me or text me anytime, 404-395-8057.
There we go.
And so I'm love helping people. So whether it's buying, selling, investing in a piece of property, I work with Jason Wilson. He's incredible. He and Aaron Wilson's experience between 20 years, and from not only from experience but customer service standpoint, but literally if you just not even if it's just to buy or sell a house, if you just anything that I could help or pour into you as far as recovery, life, my story, you want to get to know me, you want to hang out, whatever, I'm willing to do anything.
That's awesome, man. Dude, Davis, you're one of the coolest, most down-to-earth, genuine dudes I've definitely ever met. And also one of the, like you said, one of your life mission is to help people. You've always been there for me, like always checking up on me, seeing how I'm doing. You're always calling people. One of the most genuine guys I know for sure. And I really, really appreciate you being so vulnerable, number one, on the podcast, because I know in the beginning you were a little bit apprehensive about, what you wanted to share and all that kind of stuff. But I think that anybody listening to this is going to respect the hell out of, about your story and everything that you shared. And I really appreciate you coming on, dude.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, and hope people listening gain something from it.
Of course. I know they will for sure. Well, cool. Well, that's all we got time for. Thank you,
Thank you,
bro.
guys. Have a good one.
Alrighty. Thanks again for listening, everybody. I really do mean that from the bottom of my heart. I hope you enjoyed that conversation, because I know Davis and I really had a great time recording that. And again, I really want to thank Davis for opening up and sharing his story with the world. If you want to follow Davis or use him as your real estate agent, find him on Facebook as Davis Jenkins, and on Instagram and Snapchat as @DavisJenkins21, all one word. If you want to support the podcast, the best way to do that is, unfortunately, through iTunes. iTunes just so happens to be the best place for podcasts to be discovered and all that. But leave it a 5-star review and give me some feedback in there. If you have an iPhone, go on the podcast app, leave a review, 5 stars preferably. And let me know what you like, how I can make this podcast better. Give me some feedback. Tell me a story. Whatever you want to write in there, as long as it can help me. Don't just, I would prefer something that's not just like, this podcast sucks. Give me some critical feedback. Say, it sucks because blank. The audio quality was bad. I can't stand Andrew's voice. The blah, blah, blah. Give me something of why. But hopefully you don't think it sucks. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Because I really enjoy recording these. And I'm going to keep doing it. The haters won't stop me. You can't hold me down. But anyways, go on iTunes. Please, please, please. Because I want to jump up in the new and noteworthy section. That is a section of the iTunes store that displays new and noteworthy podcasts. Wow, what a novel concept. But because of that, I only have 8 weeks to get in there. You can only be new for 8 weeks. So please subscribe and rate and review and all that stuff. If you want to follow me on my social media platforms, the best way to find me is to go to my website, andrewdeitsch.com. That's Andrew, DEITSCH.com. And you can find links to all of my social media handles and accounts. I'm going to shut up now. But episode 4 is up next with my buddy Tyler Small. And if you want to know how to sneak backstage at any concert, you definitely need to listen to that episode. Again, I'm cranking them out as fast as possible. So stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss a single episode, my friends. Thanks again for listening. And I hope that I will be able to continue my mission of having meaningful, uninterrupted conversations with fascinating human beings. That's all I got. Peace out, everybody. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.